And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Friday, June 24th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer, and we are brought to you by Odd Shopper. Same 14-game slate we had earlier today. We're going to do it again 5 hours later, but we've got extra information at this point in time. New lineups are in. Got a lot more to talk about, so I hope you guys are ready for it. Please, before we get started, before we do anything, this is paramount. We want to get these likes in now. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. We want to take that credit over the Live Before Law crew. We're better. We want to show them that we're better. Hit the thumbs up now. Adam, how are you? Lots of fun stuff happening to you in the past 5 hours, I'm sure.
Yeah, having a blast. Recorded my videos, watched like half an episode of The Boys, argued with my sister about where we're going for Father's Day dinner on Sunday. Having a great day.
There you go. Can't ask for much more there. My recommendation, go to Burger King. Be a great time. Delicious stuff. Not a lot changed here. We just did this. We got a lot more to talk about, though. We've got finalized lineups at 10 other teams at this point. Cubs lineup came out a couple seconds ago, so I'll update that one much later in the show when it actually matters, but you ready to just do this? You ready to dive in? I don't have anything new to say. Yeah, figured as much. First game up, Yankees, Astros. Luis Severino going for the Yanks, 4-run implied total for New York. Justin Verlander on the hill for Houston, 3.5 run implied total. We've got Severino at about 12% ownership. We've got Justin Verlander at 7%. I have a slight lean towards Verlander over Severino. I think both guys look pretty good. I would just kind of want a little bit more ownership in the aggregate to both of them. Separate them if you can. Do you have a preference between the two?
Not really. I mean, that's how I view it as well. Like, they're very similar to me in that they are clearly two of the most talented pitchers on the slate. They also have ridiculously bad matchups and are really risky. But you're not getting much ownership going to them. You know, relatively speaking, you're getting like half the ownership going to Severino that's going to Nola. You're getting like a quarter of it or a third of it going to Verlander compared to Nola. We do have the Astros lineup. It's normal. One thing I wanted to try and pay attention to there is Severino actually has pretty substantial strikeout splits this year, which may or may not continue. If you go back, you know, in previous seasons, he was good at striking out lefties, but so far this year, he's only struck out 18.5% of lefties, 37.5% of righties. So I was hoping maybe we'd get lucky and get like a weird Houston lineup, but we didn't. It has Brantley, Alvarez, Tucker in the top 5. So still just a really rough spot, but certainly plenty of upside for both of these guys.
It serves me right for trying to copy in the Cubs lineup while we do this. The moment I go to click the macro button in my sheet to add the lineup, the button just disappears, just like into the blankness. But it, like, I can mouse over it and it's still there. And then it just showed up after I clicked on it. Got a little nervous there. Anyway, let's, ultimately, I just feel like I have the ability to pay up a little bit more at pitcher, and I'm going to try to get to a little bit more Verlander, probably at the expense of a little bit of Nola. I do now have Nola 0.8 of a point ahead of Verlander, 2.5 ahead of Severino, and then we'll get to my boy Alek Manoah in a little bit. When push comes to shove, we've got roughly 20% aggregate ownership to Severino and Verlander. Would you assume you're over that number, under that number, or probably just somewhere around it and you don't really know?
Probably around it.
Okay.
A lot's going to depend on what offenses I'm getting to. I mean, one thing that stood out this morning when we did the show was there's a lot of low-owned offenses that I am relatively interested in. And if that's going to be the case, then I'm going to end up just getting it'll make it easier to just be getting to, you know, Nola, Springs, whatever pitchers I want and not worry about ownership too much. If I'm getting to more popular teams, that's where guys like Severino and Verlander start to come in.
Okay, that makes some sense. Anxious to see where you actually end up. Maybe I'll take a peek at it on the process show. That gets uploaded Monday through Friday, relatively early in the morning, but that would be a good time to go back and see where did Adam actually end up. All right, let's talk offenses here. And it's a quick discussion if we're talking about it from an ownership perspective. The Yankees are 21st out of 28 teams in ownership. The Astros even further behind there, 27th of 28 teams, the second lowest owned team. I think Verlander and Severino are good. On a 14-game slate, I have a hard time believing that the Astros should be the 27th owned team of 28. No matter what pitcher is on the opposite side, I think there's some value here. So the question is, do you ever end up having the ability to get to it? Or are there just other expensive, good teams that have better spots?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's other good teams in better spots that aren't pulling much ownership, and it's going to make me want to get to them. I will say that, oh, I'm looking at FanDuel, so that's why it's different. Like when you, to me, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, like these are teams in better spots that also aren't pulling that much ownership, and are expensive. So like, I think I probably get to them before I get to Houston, before I get to the Yankees. I do think it's worth mentioning with Houston in particular, though, just like I had mentioned with Severino's strikeout splits this year, he's allowed a 235 ISO to lefties, a 199 expected ISO compared to a 104 expected ISO to righties. So having, Alvarez and Brantley and Tucker is actually pretty appealing to me.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird spots where I feel like I almost need like a manual manipulation of something in my lineup process, because I don't think that these guys are going to naturally sort to the top just because of how good the pitching matchup is and how big the slate is. But at the same time, I feel like I should just say, like, I want, 7% Astro stacks and just take it and call it a day.
Well, and also
or Yankees.
Yeah, and also any Houston or Yankees you get to is going to put you over the field, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we basically have the Astros fully unowned. These situations are probably pretty tough. I'd be pretty comfortable saying the Astros and the Yankees are like 2% owned in the aggregate, something, 1.5 to 2. Like, I don't get the sense that every single Astro is going to be 0.5% owned or whatever, or however low it is, but it's still, it takes nothing to be over the field here.
Yeah, I mean, we have every hitter in this game with the exception of Aaron Judge projected for less than 1% ownership. Right. I agree with you that in reality, it's probably like a couple percent, but yeah, still.
And that's just like a really difficult thing to hit the true tail end of projections here. It's just sort of one of those things you gotta note. I wish I had more. Like, I find this game fascinating that they are both 2.5% to be the top stack on a day where average is 3.5%. There's some appeal there for the Yankees and Astros. I get the idea if you guys want to take the shot there because the offenses are probably the two best on the slate, but I don't know how easy it's going to be. Anything else here for Yankees and Astros?
I don't think so.
Alrighty. Guardians and Red Sox. 4.4 run implied total for Cleveland, 4.6 for Boston. Cal Quantrill and Nick Pivetta. This one's going to be a little bit easier to talk to from a pitching perspective. Neither guy is getting any ownership, and I'm not entirely sure that either one of them should get anything other than like random lineups if you're a 150 maxer.
Yeah, I mean, it's with Pivetta, it's a pricing issue. He's 9,800 on DraftKings. The matchup against Cleveland isn't ideal either. Not a lot of strikeouts in that lineup, but it's just very difficult to pay that price tag for Pivetta. He's projected to be under-owned, a 9% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 1% projected ownership, but that's still pretty, a pretty unlikely option. And then you factor in that he's expensive. It's just going to be tough to get there. On the other side, Quantrill's terrible, has a bad matchup against the Red Sox. So even if he were more favorably priced, I would have a hard time getting there.
Okay, we're on the same page there. Neither team really pulling any ownership. You could say that they're just like smack dab in the middle of all of this. Red Sox are 10th in aggregate ownership. A lot of that just being driven by Devers. So you kind of make a case that the Red Sox are owned even less than they are. The Guardians, basically the exact same situation, just replace Devers with Jose Ramirez. They're basically the same situations on both sides. Do you like either side of this game more or less? I have a stand. I wouldn't say I have a stand. I have a preference. I'm guessing we have the same preference.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer Boston. Pivetta is home run prone. He'll give up some power, but I also think it's very fair to say he's a better pitcher than Quantrill. Quantrill this year only striking out 18.5% of lefties, 12% of righties, 182 expected ISO to righties, 215 to lefties. And then also just a little bit more appealing lineup for the Red Sox as well. Duran leading off again is inexpensive. Devers is great. Martinez and Story have power. Verdugo's cheap. You are missing Bogarts. So one of my preferred shortstop options, not on the board here, does weaken that lineup a little bit. But I do still like 1 through 5 in particular for the Red Sox. For the Guardians, it's more so Ramirez stands out. And then if you get to some, Rosario, Naylor, Gonzalez, Reyes, you're fine. They do have some power, but I think Boston's just the more appealing side and has the better matchup.
Yeah, I feel like they're really getting slept on here.
Agreed.
Because even just putting Devers in a 5-man stack doesn't mean anything. Like it's not owned anyway. Cal Quantrill stinks. He doesn't miss bats. I mean, obviously you would like Bogarts to be in the lineup, but I feel like Boston should be higher than 10th in ownership. That seems like a spot where I wouldn't be surprised if you looked at, there's not a good example today because I guess the relay throw isn't $15, but like in the big GPP, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw 150 maxers heavier on the Red Sox than you saw the non 150 maxers.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And then on the Guardian side, play Jose Ramirez, and that's it. I don't have anything else here.
Ramirez is the one that stands out. I still think, I guess we can throw Steven Kwan in there, but I was going to say 2 through 6 is somewhat appealing, but Ramirez clearly just head and shoulders the best.
Yeah. And, obviously Pivetta better than Quantrill too. So
yeah, still gives up power.
That negative.
For Pivetta this year, 221 expected ISO to lefties, 211 to righties. His actual ISO numbers are quite a bit lower, so seems likely that he starts to run into some more home run issues.
Alrighty. Anything else here? Guardians and Red Sox.
No, I think that's it.
Okay. I feel I really, really need to just sit down maybe over the next 2 days when I don't have shows and think about questions I could ask you here. But there's just no way. I need a prompt to continue conversation sometimes. And this is not a you thing. This is just like sometimes I feel like I need to give out more information during the show and I don't know how to squeeze it out of talking about the Guardians.
I mean, it's baseball. There's only so much you can say.
Well, you and I know that, but that might not be the best way to do content.
Well, yeah, sure. But like,
otherwise you and I are going to finish this deeper dive in 10 minutes.
Yeah, sure. But like, I'm also not going to sit here and just spew random bullshit to.
You know what? I know what we can do. And I don't have to circle back to Yankees and Astros because that's not going to be applicable here. Are there cash game options that you think make sense for either side of this game? I think that's an actual discussion point.
Yeah. So the caveat being I haven't built my cash lineup here. But from the Yankees Astros game, I don't think that there are. I mean, that's reflected in the fact that nobody is getting more than like 1% ownership. From the Boston game, I think both of the third basemen are top options. I think you could see a world where Jarren Duran is useful, but I don't think he ends up making it into mine. But, wouldn't be shocking to me if he was like a last guy in type. But I think it's Ramirez / Devers are the guys that I would most expect to see in a cash lineup.
Okay. Well, we're on the same page. I think that's the prompt there. What guys can you reasonably expect to see in a cash lineup? Or at least if you saw them in a cash lineup, you don't react like, well, this guy screwed up, I should write his screen name down.
Right. Yeah, I would say Devers and Ramirez are certainly on the short list of third base options.
I would agree. And if you ask me to pick between the two, I'm picking Devers, but I wouldn't care either way.
Yep, agreed.
All right. Rays and Pirates, 4.3 run implied total for the Rays, 2.8 now for the Pirates. That is quite a bit lower than what it was when you and I did this show earlier today. Jeffrey Springs going for the Rays, Mitch Keller going for the Pirates. Keller's about 10% owned. I think that seems about right. There's just so many strikeouts in the Rays lineup that even Keller starts to become appealing at 6,700. But I'm burying the lead if we start with Keller. We got to talk about Springs. 45% owned on DraftKings at 8,500. 30% owned at 8,300 on FanDuel. He's the most owned pitcher today, and I can't really disagree with it. If you have enough money, like I think that there are slightly higher end options, but the fact that you get him at 8,500, I don't know how you get away from this. And if we're talking cash games, he's got to be in it.
Probably. Yeah, clearly one of the top pitching options in tournaments and cash games. Good matchup against Pittsburgh, good park to pitch in at Tropicana, good pitcher overall. Springs has struck out 26.8% of hitters. That's the 5th highest strikeout percentage on the slate. He's only walking 6% of hitters. He has a 3.25 xFIP. he just looks really, really good here. A lot of the good pitchers on this slate have relatively difficult matchups. He certainly does not. He's also less expensive. He's in a good park. There's just nothing negative to say about Springs outside of he's getting a lot of ownership. But as you and I talked about this morning, as Alex and I have talked about previously, that typically doesn't deter me from rostering pitchers nearly as much as it does from rostering hitters, because for one, pitchers are taking up one spot in your lineup as opposed to half of your lineup if you're stacking. And two, they're just more projectable. Not to say that there isn't still volatility in pitchers, there is, but even the best hitters in the best spots are going to fail much more often than the best pitchers in the best spots.
Yeah, I just don't know how you don't want to go here. Everything is pointing towards Springs. I mean, so that should be the perfect opportunity for him to get shellacked.
Sure.
But it just looks, I don't know how you get away from it. Feels like it's like a slightly lesser version of Ohtani from yesterday or 2 days ago or whatever it was, where like he's just priced in a range where he should be $1,000 more expensive at the very least.
The Dylan Cease against the Tigers play from like last week or whatever it was.
Yeah, that one works too. Touch on Keller if you have any thoughts here. I tend to think that he's just sort of properly owned.
Yeah, I think the ownership makes sense. He's not particularly good. He used to strike guys out and get hit really hard. Now he just gets hit really hard. He's only struck out about 18.5% of hitters this year, but it is a good park and it is a good lineup to face. I mean, you still don't have Wander Franco. You don't have Margot. You don't have Kiermaier. I legitimately don't know who three guys in this lineup are. Luke Raley, I think maybe used to be on the Dodgers, but I can't tell you anything about him other than that. I don't know who Jonathan Aranda is. I don't know who Rene
123 WRC plus for Aranda in Steamer. So we might want to figure out who he is.
Yeah, I was going to pull him up as I was talking. He is 24. Fangraphs has him as the Rays number 18 prospect.
Okay. Well, that's the Rays, so that could also mean he's like the best player in baseball.
Sure. Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, Steamer has him with a 156 ISO. He didn't strike out a lot at AAA this year. 20% strikeout percentage, 202 ISO at AAA. Last year at AA, 19.6% strikeout percentage, 215 ISO. Steamer projects him for a 21.5% strikeout percentage. Luke Raley Luke Raley played with the Dodgers. He has played 33 total major league games. He projects for about a 30% strikeout percentage, 108 WRC plus, 182 ISO. Plenty. So at the very least, there's strikeouts there. Taylor Walls is not a good hitter. Brett Phillips strikes out a bunch. Rene Pinto, we needed to figure out who he was. He is 25. Fangraphs has him as the 20th best prospect for the Rays. Projects for a 31% strikeout percentage, 94 WRC plus in Steamer, 77 WRC plus rest of season from Zips. Overall, the point here is that while Mitch Keller isn't very good at getting strikeouts anymore, he is pitching in a favorable pitcher's park. He is really cheap, and he is facing about as bad a Tampa lineup as you can possibly get.
Yeah, what's really crazy is like from a WRC plus perspective in Steamer, it's not bad. From a strikeout perspective, 4 guys projected for 30% or higher strikeout rates, including Brett Phillips at 36%. And that says nothing for Arozarena or Choi, who are at 25 and 26, which would normally be big numbers, and just gets like, they become like average at best in the lineup itself.
Yeah, Josh Lowe strikes out 30% as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's in there he was one of the 2 30s at the top there at the 4 or 5 spot. Just strikeouts galore here. Certainly more interesting from a pitching perspective. The question then I have for you is, we've got the Rays at 20% ownership. We've got the Pirates at 24. Is there anything here for you from a stack perspective? Is there value in going to the Pirates on the opposite side of Springs ownership?
I have a really difficult time wanting to get to the Pirates, even with Springs being popular. I did mention Tampa Bay as a good tournament stack in my videos earlier for FanDuel. I don't think the lineup was even out yet when I recorded that. It's certainly hard to really want to get to them here. But on FanDuel, they do have a 3.7 stack score. If you just kind of sort by stack score in the top stacks tool, they're one of the first under-owned teams to show up. They're 4th It's Oakland,
Okay.
St. Louis, Seattle, Tampa. So from that standpoint, I could see wanting to get there, but realistically, it's very difficult to want to prioritize a team that looks as bad as Tampa Bay does.
All righty. I don't see a single option in either one of these teams that I think is cash viable. Do you?
I don't. Well, outside of Jeffrey Springs, I
Yeah.
don't think so. Yeah, I mean, like a Rosarania is a good play, but I'm not paying 5,200 for him in cash. Josh Lowe at 3K. If I had to guess, like what hitter from this game maybe ended up somehow getting into my cash lineup, it would be Josh Lowe. But I also fully expect to be going to Alec Thomas for $100 less instead.
Yeah. All right. Nothing else here, Rays or Pirates?
Right.
I think I'm making the right decision. I think this cash question is going to be the thing that buys us like an extra 30 seconds to a minute on every one of these games when we come sliding into 6 p.m. All right, schedule for the rest of the day. This one should be pretty easy for all of you. We have MLB Live Before Lock coming up immediately after this. You don't even have to leave this stream. Stay here, 6 to 7:05. The boys will take you all the way up until lock, breaking it all down one final time before we roll into the weekend. Free content. This I know will be helpful for you if you're watching this show. The MLB Top Stacks tool is free at stokastic.com. Head on over, check it out. Gives you the top stack percentage, top value. You'll see the aggregate ownership and our stack score. You'll see all of that. It won't cost you a thing. So either the link will be in chat or you can go straight to stokastic.com. That's Stokastic. I spelled that really quickly for not having done that yet. So I'm pretty proud of that. MMA rankings also free. You should play the MMA cards this Saturday. You probably shouldn't watch it, but that's neither here nor there. Still play the DFS contest. Adam, are you in tiebreakers or anything this week, or is it kicked down the road a little bit to an actual real card?
Yeah, round 2 is I think July 2nd.
Okay.
So there is a tiebreaker today, but I'm not in it because I won my way in last week.
There you go. I know. I think Blender's tied for a couple of those spots,
Yeah,
one of the
Blender,
people.
There was a 6-man tiebreaker last week. 4 of them,
4.
including Blender, ran the same lineup, so they are battling for 2 spots this week.
Thought so. I remember seeing him post about it, and I think talk shit to you for being in. I think you were in second, and then somebody was ahead of you.
Yeah, I got second.
Okay.
So yeah, they will probably once again tie because they are all obviously just using the optimal lineup and using the same projections. So.
All righty. Well, I mean, if anybody's going to change it up, I wouldn't be surprised if Blender did, knowing that everybody else is running the same shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of talked to him prior, like I talked to him after the last slate locked, and he seemed to think that duping 2/3 of the field was the correct decision.
Interesting. I'm probably landing with you on this one. I guess you don't think the same.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't really care, but I also had my lineup that I played being better than the one that they all played. So
yeah,
it was
that'll do it.
Given that, it was easy.
Sure is. All right, let's talk Braves and Dodgers. 4.3 run implied total for the Braves, 4.8 for the Dodgers. Ian Anderson and Julio Urias. Anderson not owned, probably shouldn't be. It's the Dodgers. Urias 3% owned. Do I think that he should be like 7% owned? I do. Is that a talking point? It's not. Do you want to talk about Urias or Anderson?
Nope. I'm with you. Urias is another one. He's similar to like Pivetta for me, where should his ownership be a little bit higher? Yeah, probably. Should you have a 45-3 gap from Springs to Urias? Probably not. But is that something that's going to be really actionable for me in my lineups? Also probably not, because I'm just going to typically prefer getting to low-owned bats over Julio Urias when I'm trying to be contrarian in lineup. So he's fine. He's a good enough pitcher. It's a dangerous matchup against the Braves. They have tons and tons of power. There are also strikeouts in this lineup, but certainly just not going to be able to prioritize pitching in this matchup.
Well, let's talk about this matchup then, because I think we talked about it a little bit earlier today, and we have a little bit of new information to discuss. The Dodgers are currently 14th in aggregate ownership, but second in top stack score. The Braves are fully unowned. They are 24th in aggregate ownership, 17th in top stack score. Let's start with the Dodgers because they're second. How appealing are they to you on this slate?
Very, because they're not pulling much ownership. They are expensive. Anderson is another pitcher that has had success in the past, but has kind of dropped off. 19.7% strikeout percentage this year, double-digit walk percentage, 4.27 xFIP. The Dodgers just not pulling ownership here makes them interesting. And a big reason they're not pulling ownership, and the one thing that makes it so it is going to be tough to get to them, is that you don't have good, cheap pitching. You have Keller that you can go to. We'll talk about Marquez. We can talk about Ronny Garcia. But most of the pitching that you're going to get to is, basically $7,900 Merrill Kelly and higher. So it is going to be kind of difficult to afford the Dodgers, but they're a really, really good offense, and they're not getting ownership here.
It's fascinating to me how little it is. Like, clearly happy to get to the Dodgers. There are certainly bats that I would like to get to. Where do you land on the Braves? Should they be should the Dodgers be twice as likely to be the top stack as the Braves in this spot against Urias? Does that make sense to you? Do you have any interest in the Braves? Where do these two teams rank in comparison to, say, the Yankees and Astros? Lots of questions for you. Take them however you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the sense of like the Dodgers being twice as likely to succeed as the Braves, I think the gap should be a little bit smaller. The Braves just have so much power in their lineup as well, but I do prefer the spot going against Anderson compared to going against Urias. But I think that they're kind of similar offenses in that they're both expensive. They're both difficult to get to. They both have relatively difficult matchups, not the worst matchups, but also not Cal Quantrill type matchups. But I think that they're kind of just similar in that it's going to be kind of tough to get to them because they are expensive, but you're also just getting a massive ceiling at very low ownership because of the amount of power in both lineups.
I'm looking something up quickly. I think I have a decent talking point, but I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so maybe it's just Steamer being more pessimistic. Zips has Steamer for the rest of the season at a 4.2, or Steamer has Urias at a 4.27 FIP for the rest of the season. Zips has him at 363. The gap between Anderson and Urias in Steamer is 1/100th of a FIP point and 1% in K rate. That is a very important distinction if you're looking at this via Steamer projections like I have in my sheet right now. You don't I wouldn't expect to see someone who's been in the majors as long as this to have a 6.6 gap in projected FIP. I'm curious to see where Anderson lands across both. So Zips is lower on both of these guys. Zips also has Anderson.
Zips is higher on Urias.
What define? You mean higher? Like he's
higher,
better?
like bullish.
Yeah. So Zips also has Anderson at 3.97. So both guys are like a decent chunk below the Steamer rate. I don't know what to do with that, but maybe these guys should be a little bit closer than they actually are. I'm still mildly interested in the Braves, probably less so than I was earlier. I think it's easier to get to the Dodgers, and I definitely want to get to both of these teams before I would want to get to Yankees or Stros.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at as well. And neither of these pitchers give up a ton of power. It's worth noting, even though Anderson's strikeout numbers are down, still only a 159 expected ISO to righties, 112 to lefties. For Urias, 163 to righties, 274 to lefties, but obviously not facing nearly as many lefties as righties over the course of the season. And also the Braves lineup not particularly left-handed heavy at all outside of Matt Olson. So not a whole lot that I think you can do with that.
Any opportunities for cash lineups here? I'm guessing if we're going to do it, it's Trey Turner at best. Will Smith, maybe.
I don't think it's Smith because you have
one of those catchers was like 40% owned too.
Yeah, you have like 3K Mitch Garver. Assuming he's in the lineup. But I do think that maybe Trey Turner, but I doubt it because just kind of thinking about this slate as a whole, we haven't gotten to him yet, but very good spot for Trout, very good spot for Ohtani. You're going to be prioritizing getting to those guys over paying up for Trey Turner, I would think.
Okay. I got nothing else here, so let's keep it moving. Rangers and Nationals. 5-run implied total for the Rangers, 4 for the Nats. Dane Dunning and Paolo Espino going in this one. Neither guy really pulling any ownership. We had at least mild talking interest in Dunning earlier today. Not that I don't now, but there are a lot of guys from below Merrill Kelly where I think you can just sort of pick anybody and they're all the same.
Yeah, Dunning's just one of those guys that he'll fit in nicely in your Dodger stacks or Brave stacks or whatever expensive team that you're looking to get to, but it's just going to be difficult to really prioritize him. He's getting 4% ownership, maybe a little bit lower than it should be, but he's got about a 21% strikeout percentage this year, decent matchup, solid pitcher. He's got about a 3.8 xFIP, but just doesn't really stand out. I think that it's just he's cheap enough where he will let you get to some of these more expensive bats, but it's also just going to be difficult to really prioritize him over some of these higher end arms.
I don't have anything to say about Espino, other than he's the cheapest pitcher on the slate. I would not try to go to him, but you guys do you.
Yeah, not particularly interested in getting there. 22% strikeout percentage against righties for him this year, 15% against lefties. Has given up more power to righties with a 219 expected ISO. That's been the case for him even going back to previous seasons. Since the start of the 2020 season, 138 actual ISO, 176 expected ISO against lefties, compared to 217 and 233 respectively against righties. So again, pointing to that 3K Mitch Garver piece.
Well, we're going to need to talk at least a little bit about the Rangers here, and we're going to talk about the guy that you're using as your cash catcher today in Mitch Garver. And the Rangers are currently second in aggregate ownership, fifth in top stack, eighth in our stack score. I'm probably a little bit higher than we are on the Rangers, but I also am not as high as the public is on the Rangers. Where do you end up coming in on Texas?
Yeah, I think that's my sentiment as well. I do like the spot for the Rangers. Looking individually at the ownership, you have 22% going to Garver, but then also 14% coming into Seager, 13% coming to Semien. So especially if you're including all three of those guys in your stack, it's going to be kind of difficult to differentiate. One really good way I think you could differentiate is playing Jonah Heim over Mitch Garver on DraftKings. Heim projected for 1% ownership compared to the 22% for Garver. That gap obviously should not be that big when you're just talking about two hitters, basically. Adolis Garcia, I think, looks very good as well. Just going to be difficult to prioritize because he's a $4,900 outfielder, and there's no shortage of good outfield options ever. No. But 7% ownership in a spot against a pitcher that doesn't miss a lot of bats and gives up a lot of power.
All righty. Nats bats, 13th in ownership, 6th, though, in our stack score. A lot of that is on the back of just a really nice value rating. 4-run implied total, not exactly appealing. It's not a very good lineup, really. The 2 through 6 are real, but it's not the best spot in the world. There's no ownership going to Dunning for it to matter. Do you get to the Nats?
I mentioned them on FanDuel in the tournament plays video earlier. It was the same kind of thing as Tampa Bay. Like, I don't have a very strong case for why I think they do well or anything like that. But it was just, if you sort by stack score in the top stacks tool, they were one of the teams towards the top of, like if you go down stack score and look at teams that are under owned, the Nats were towards the top there. But individually, Soto, Bell, Cruz, I think all look pretty good. But overall, I'm just not that interested in taking a below average offense against Dunning on a slate of this size.
I think that makes sense. So if we're talking cash options, we mentioned it before, Mitch Garver is most likely your starting catcher. I don't really think you're going to be going a different direction. Do you?
No. Again, I haven't built a lineup, so that's not set in stone, but I fully expect it will be Mitch Garver. I think you also potentially can get to Semien or Seager.
Same.
They aren't, I'm not quite as sure on them because, again, like prioritizing some combination of Ohtani, Trout, if not both, is certainly higher on the list of priorities for me than Corey Seager or Marcus Semien. But shortstop and second base are both relatively weak positions as well.
So we've got Seager at 14% ownership at short. We've got Bobby Witt at 10 and Tim Anderson at 15. Everybody else is below that. Clearly Correa, Turner probably still in sniffing distance of this. I actually have Seager as my best raw play for today. Ownership is also there. So I think that Seager would be the first guy that I'm trying to get to. But if it ended up being Bobby Witt or Tim Anderson, I think either one of those answers are going to be fine. We'll touch on those guys in a bit.
Yeah, I agree.
And then for the Nats, if you got Soto, there are worse crimes in the world, but I don't think that's happening either.
Yeah, I haven't built the lineup, but I assume my outfield is probably going to be Ohtani, Trout, Thomas.
There you go.
Alec Thomas, not Lane Thomas.
Yeah. Frank Thomas?
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be out in the outfield any longer. He'd just be doing boner pill commercials or something. 3.9 run implied total for the Brewers, 4.6 for the Blue Jays. Adrian Hauser going for Milwaukee. Alek Manoah going for Toronto. No ownership going to Hauser. We don't need to talk about him. Alek Manoah, 11% owned on DraftKings, 3% owned on FanDuel, where he's actually 10,400. I am in the same spot that I was earlier today. I think I like Manoah more than the industry. I have him in at double his current ownership, and I think he's the most underrepresented pitcher on today's slate.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable take. He was in both my DraftKings and FanDuel tournament pitchers videos. 10% projected ownership now, 12% top 2 percentage on DraftKings. It's a good strikeout matchup against Milwaukee. They've been slightly above average offensively, 102 WRC plus on their active roster, but also a 24% strikeout percentage. And Manoah is a good pitcher. He's got about a 23% strikeout percentage this year, 3.75 xFIP, and just isn't pulling quite as much ownership as some of the other payoff options.
It's a spot that I just want to be. So how do you feel about him ignoring ownership? How do you feel about him relative to those other top options?
I think he's comparable to Severino and Verlander.
Okay.
I prefer him to Urias. I prefer him to Gore.
Okay. Just trying to get a feel. Obviously, I don't think Pivetta is in the same sort of discussion right now.
I agree.
At this moment, I have Manoah slightly ahead of Verlander in raw projection, and he's $1,100 cheaper. I'm cool with that. And I like Verlander quite a bit in comparison to a 7% ownership rate. Like a lot of guys at the top that just look good today. Matchup is the interesting piece for all of it. Anything else you want to touch on for Manoah?
No, just we don't have the Milwaukee lineup yet, as far as I know. So
I don't remember seeing it.
Yeah, obviously, just keep an eye on that. Maybe we happen to get a watered down lineup and he looks even better. But assuming that you're going to get the normal lineup, he still makes a lot of sense to me in tournaments.
All right. Then we're going to need to talk about Blue Jays bats, and I'd be surprised if this isn't a team that you're desperately trying to target today. 9th in aggregate ownership, 1st in our top stack tool. Not cheap, that's for sure, at least at the top, but to me, the Blue Jays are getting underrepresented here, and this is a spot where I want to go, and they end up looking better than the Braves and the Dodgers and stuff because they've just got a better matchup than those teams.
Yeah, Hauser doesn't miss a lot of bats. He does typically do a pretty good job of limiting power. His ISO allowed to righties this year is below 100, but a 168 expected ISO suggests he's been a little bit lucky there. Similarly, 280 WOBA allowed to righties, but a 349 expected WOBA. And these aren't average right-handed hitters in the Toronto lineup. No George Springer, so the lineup is a little bit weaker than we would normally get. But Bichette, Guerrero, Kirk, Hernandez, still a very formidable middle of the order, and they're just not pulling a lot of ownership. They're another team similarly owned to the Dodgers, similarly owned to the Cardinals, who we'll talk about, similarly owned to the Red Sox. And so even though the matchup isn't perfect, I just like getting to Toronto when they're not pulling a lot of ownership.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Easy to stack too, maybe not from a money perspective, but based on the order. MPE in the one spot, 2nd and 3rd. Then you go short, 1st, center, and then you're getting to the outfielders. It's always great when you can get position players in those first 5 spots because you can find outfielders anywhere. Position players are going to be a little bit of a different bag. So sign me up for the Blue Jays. Given the fact that they have a 6.5% chance of being the top stack and are number 1 in our top stack tool for the last run, to get them at just 3.9% aggregate ownership stands out to me. Nothing stands out for the Brewers, though.
No, not for me either. Really difficult to make any sort of strong case for anybody on the Brewers, I think.
Yeah. Don't think that there's any strong case that we can make for anybody from the Blue Jays from a cash perspective either.
No, I don't think so either. It's just like if you're paying up at first base, you're going Ohtani over Guerrero. If you're paying up a shortstop, you're probably going Seager or Anderson over Bichette. Yeah, I don't have any sort of cash argument for any of these guys.
All righty. Then we will continue on to Twins and Rockies. 5.1 run implied total for the Twins, 4 for the Rockies. Dylan Bundy and German Marquez. Is there anything here for you pitching? Do either of these guys stand out if you're looking to be either not on Merrill Kelly or just you need additional salary?
Yeah, I think both pitchers at the very least, fit into your expensive stack builds in the same way that like Dane Dunning does. You're not looking at Dylan Bundy and saying, oh yeah, I'm really confident Dylan Bundy's going to pitch well, because that would be crazy. But he does have a good matchup against Colorado. He is reasonably priced at 7,700. And then for Marquez, he's the better of the two pitchers, 3.68 xFIP so far this season, 20.1% strikeout percentage, but does have the more difficult matchup against the Twins. No Byron Buxton again for Minnesota, so that matchup gets a little bit easier for Marquez. But like even just thinking about him compared to Merrill Kelly has a 20.3% strikeout percentage this year. Marquez is at 20.1%. I misspoke earlier, 3.81 xFIP for Marquez, 4.09 for Kelly. You're talking about very, very similar pitchers. So the entire difference in ownership is simply that Kelly has a much better matchup, which means that he should be more popular, but probably not by the margins that he is. Right now we have Kelly projected for 24% ownership. We have Marquez projected for 3%. So, and Marquez being $1,000 less expensive. So that's a spot where you can certainly pivot some of your Kelly to Marquez if you wanted to save some ownership, or you can just play, Kelly plus Marquez and do whatever you want with bats. So I do have some interest in Marquez just because he's out of Coors Field. He's cheap. He's projected to be under-owned. He's going to let me be different with bats. There's a lot of things I think from a roster construction standpoint working in his favor.
All righty. We'll lead it off with the Twins bats here. 7th in aggregate ownership, 5th in our top stack metric. No Byron Buxton in the Twins lineup. Does that make you more likely to get to Minnesota, less likely to get to Minnesota, indifferent? Where do you stand?
I guess it makes me a little bit less likely just because he would have been one of the top outfield options on the slate. So that probably would have just pulled up some of my Minnesota stacks, but it's still a pretty solid team to get to. Arias is really expensive leading off, but Correa we know has power. He's another 5K shortstop you can throw into that conversation where he's most likely going to get less ownership than guys like Seager, but he has the same range of outcomes for all intents and purposes. Alex Kirilloff is still really inexpensive at 2,600. He's batting 5th. Kepler's reasonably priced at 4,800. So I do still have some interest in the Twins here, even though, I respect Marquez as a pitcher.
Okay. Do you respect anything on the Colorado Rockies side?
Not particularly. Dylan Bundy is very good at giving up home runs, so they have that working for them. 1.67 home runs per 9 for Bundy so far this year. 187 expected ISO to righties, 200 the lefties. If you wanted to, grab CJ Cron or Brendan Rodgers and try and get a home run there, I don't think that's crazy, but there's also just plenty of guys that are going to be ahead of them.
Any cash options for you? I guess I'm asking on the Twins side, but Ryan McMahon pulling enough ownership that I guess I got to ask. Doesn't seem likely. Kirilloff?
What'd you say?
Kirilloff would be sort of the only
right.
option.
I was going to say, like, if I had Kirilloff, I wouldn't be shocked, but I'm also assuming that I'm going to have Alec Thomas and I'm assuming I'm going to have Jared Walsh at first base. So that kind of takes away Kirilloff. But he is underpriced. He is at least, in the conversation. It wouldn't be shocking to me if he somehow managed to find his way in the lineup. For McMahon, the only thing I guess I would say for him is third base actually is a weird position today because you have Devers and Ramirez at the top, but there's not a very good mid-range at third base. So I could see from, maybe just punting the position. I still think you probably go to Jake Berger before you get to McMahon, but I could see him kind of just falling into a lineup because of roster construction, basically.
Yeah, let me see where I have them. Let me filter down to third base. Because there's obviously a heavy or a really good top end of third base.
Jake Berger is hitting 7th today, actually, so that's going to knock him down a little bit too.
All right. So if everybody with third base eligibility today, 3 guys are in double digits in ownership. That's Devers, Ramirez, and Jonah Bride at the flat 2K.
I forgot about him.
Devers and Ramirez Devers is my clear cut. I think this guy's the best third base option. Ramirez is not too far behind. Ryan McMahon at 3,100 actually looks kind of decent for the guy that has the 4th most ownership. So you're either punting it with Jonah Bride, I think, or you're all the way at the top.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about Bride, but that basically just reiterates what I was just saying about McMahon,
Absolutely.
where there's not really, from a cash standpoint at least, there's not $4K or $4,500 third baseman you're playing. You're either getting to Devers / Ramirez or you are saving salary at the position.
Yeah, the next three guys that I think are like the most talented third base options are Austin Riley, Arenado, and Muncy, who are 54, 53, and 5,200 respectively. So they're basically all the same guy. Sex dates. Funk overpriced Tinder. I agree. Cheap sex dating. Just funk girls. Love it. Love the porn bots. Thanks for being here. Maybe you're not a huge fan of the porn bots, and I can understand how that would happen. Maybe you'll be a much bigger fan of Odd Shopper. They are the presenting sponsor of this show. If you go to oddshopper.com, you'll have the ability to shop odds. You see what we did there with the name? It's sort of like Stokastic. If you're betting on sports, you want to make sure that you're getting the best line that you could possibly find. It's only going to penalize you if you don't do that. I don't know why you wouldn't want to put as much money in your own pocket. Odd Shopper will help you do that. You'll find the best line, a couple button clicks, and all of a sudden you're already there being ready to make the bet. That's step one. Step two, we're giving you a lot of the goods, particularly in the player prop industry, where we're giving you, it's all on the screen for nothing. This is completely free. This is no tie to a Stokastic Plus account. This is free. If you go to the player prop section of Odd Shopper, you will see projections, expected ROI on each bet, expected win percentage, and those same sort of abilities to shop the lines for the player props. If you're not using this, you are making a gigantic mistake. Just work it into your prep. It will help you now. If you can't bet legally yet, start using it now. Get a feel for it. Maybe your state will be smarter than my state and will vote it in by one single vote instead of losing by a single vote, but you never know. Shouts to North Carolina for being garbage.
I mean, my state legalized it going on 2 years ago and still hasn't managed to get an app roll out yet. So
really, that's even worse. Government these days, man. I'll tell you.
Did you see the NBA news that just broke?
Do you mean it?
Yeah.
Steve Clifford back to the Hornets?
Yeah.
I mean, I like Steve Clifford.
Yeah, I kind of did a double take because I was like, didn't he just get fired by the Hornets? And the answer was yes, like 3 years ago. But
I mean, like, I guess it makes sense. Like, he's sort of he's not all that different than Kenny Atkinson. Like, they get it done. I would expect their defense to be significantly better. He generally just takes a team and makes a team that shouldn't have a good defense end up having a decent defense. So shout out to Mark Williams, who's coming in, and maybe he could anchor that defense in year one. Doubt it, but would I have wanted to hire Steve Clifford again? Probably not. But the guy they wanted to stay in Golden State because he's probably the successor to Steve Kerr. So that'll do it. Also, it's better to be a millionaire coaching for Golden State than to be whatever you want to be in Charlotte.
Yeah.
All righty. White Sox and Orioles. White Sox, 4.9 run implied total. Orioles, 4. 61% chance to win. 60% chance to win for the White Sox. Michael Kopech and Austin Voth. No ownership to Voth. 16% ownership to Kopech. Actually, are we close? Have we gotten an ownership update? We're probably pretty close to due at this point. But anyway, how do you feel about Kopech? I think he's basically properly owned at 9K.
Yeah, I think he's fine. You and I kind of talked about it this morning. The Orioles lineup certainly isn't the cakewalk pushover that it was in previous seasons. The top of the order in particular is not bad at all. Kopech has good strikeout stuff, but also walks way too many hitters. He has about a 4.5 xFIP so far this season, but he does have a 24.6% strikeout percentage. The upside is certainly there. I think that the ownership going to him makes sense.
Effect MD wanted to know why did Atkinson pass up what he deems a decent opportunity in Charlotte? Because it's not as decent of an opportunity as you think it is, and because they pretty clearly told him, "Hey, Steve Kerr's going to coach for like 2 more years, and then you can have."
Yeah, I was going to say that's the big piece because I mean,
yeah,
most like if your options are remain an assistant coach indefinitely or go coach LaMelo Ball, you're going to go coach LaMelo Ball. But
the Hornets job is like one of the 5 worst jobs in the NBA.
Is it even with LaMelo?
Yeah, because you have Michael Jordan as your owner and a team that has never paid the luxury tax.
That's true.
You're hamstrung from the get-go. Like, would you like to coach LaMelo Ball? Yes. Like, you have an asset of a player there, but they basically can never be anything relevant. It's a shame. Jonathan VR apparently got DFA'd.
Yeah,
Sean Dre thinks LaMelo is not good, so clearly LaMelo is good. There's never been anything more true than whatever the opposite is of whatever bullshit comes out of his mouth, or I guess out of his fingers.
Not good. Wow.
Can you imagine? Could you imagine? Anyway, let's talk bats, and we definitely need to talk about the White Sox first. 4th in ownership, 6th in top stack, 7th in value, 3rd in stack score. And it's not just one guy. Anderson, Vaughn, Abreu, all in double digits. Lubob, not too far behind. Pollock, Sheets, Berger, all getting some ownership. How are you going to handle the White Sox here? Because they are certainly getting ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why they're getting the ownership. Austin Voth isn't very good. The concern that I have is that he's also not going to go very deep into this game. You're probably going to get Voth through the lineup once, maybe like 1.5 times. And then you're going to get into the Baltimore bullpen, which I just pulled up their usage. They only used on Wednesday, they only used one guy. On Tuesday, they'd only used one guy. Yesterday, they got 32 pitches from Dylan Tate, 25 from Felix Bautista at the back end. So a relatively fresh bullpen for the Orioles, and they do have some good arms out there. I think that the spot for the White Sox is getting like a little bit overrated, just because I fully expect this to be essentially a bullpen game where they're just facing a different pitcher every time that they come to the plate, more or less. That said, still an overall good spot and some favorable pricing. Tim Anderson looks like one of the better shortstop options. Andrew Vaughn is cheap batting 2nd. AJ Pollock is cheap batting 5th. Gavin Sheets is the flat minimum hitting 6th. So I understand why they're getting the ownership. I just kind of wanted to point out that I don't think this is quite as appealing a matchup as it would seem at first glance.
That dope had the nerve to be like, LaMelo Ball is not mature enough to win anything. He's 20. No one wins at 20. They don't even win at 24. What are we talking about here? Good God. It's incredible what people say. It's just truly nuts. Look, I like the White Sox, but to me, over-owned at least a little bit. Pick and choose your spots if you have it. Do they pair well with like a Alek Manoah, Justin Verlander combo? Like, I wouldn't be mad about getting something like that and negating a lot of the problems from a pitching ownership perspective, but nothing that I really need to go crazy for. You had a bit of interest in the Orioles earlier today. Does that still stand?
Yeah, I do still have some, just because I think the top of their order is good. And while Kopech is a good pitcher overall, he has had some issues with left-handed power in particular this year. 255 expected ISO compared to a 130 actual ISO. And you have Mullins here. You have Rutschman, who's inexpensive. Santander has left-handed power. The rest of the lineup is right-handed, so that is not ideal. But Mancini, Hayes, Mountcastle, still all very good hitters. And you have multi-position eligibility on Mancini now, so you actually can roster him alongside Mountcastle as well. So 1 through 6 for the Orioles, I am interested in. Individually, I lean toward the left-handed bats. 3,600 for Santander, 3,300 for Rutschman in particular stand out.
All righty. What are you seeing on the White Sox side that you think is viable from a cash perspective? Because clearly, because of their ownership, at least some of these guys are in sniffing distance.
Yeah, I mean, Anderson certainly on the short list of shortstops. Abreu, I would say, is viable at first base. I think Jared Walsh probably gets in there over him for $400 less, but wouldn't swear by that. Vaughn, you could see, but again, I'm just expecting my outfield to be Ohtani, Trout, and Thomas. So that wouldn't leave room for him. He is first base eligible as well, though. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of the White Sox have a lot of guys that are viable. I would say Anderson's probably the most likely to make it into my lineup.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Nothing from the Orioles, right?
For cash, no.
Yes. Royals and A's. 4.8 run implied total for the Royals. 4.3 for the A's. Zach Greinke, or the ghost of Zach Greinke, going up against Cole Irvin. No ownership here. No priorities here.
Pitching-wise, no. Definitely not.
All right. Hitting-wise, we got to talk about both sides. We'll start with the more owned team. That would be the Kansas City Royals. 3rd in aggregate ownership, 8th in top stack, 6th in top value. 5 separate hitters at between 10% and 13% owned. Do you see Kansas City the same way? Because obviously they're cheap. I think they're overowned.
Yeah, I think they're overowned as well. They do have some good plays. I think that
Yeah.
like they're a team that I typically get to a decent amount just because like Whit Merrifield is usually one of your better second base options. Bobby Witt is typically one of your better shortstop options. But you don't have Salvador Perez. That's one guy that normally pulls up my exposure to them. This is another team where like you just have the ownership pretty spread out where it's not like it's one guy pulling up the aggregate ownership. Right now we have 5 guys: Merrifield, Dozier, Benintendi, Melendez, and Witt, all projected to be north of 10% owned on DraftKings. So if you're going to a 5-man stack there, it's just pretty difficult to differentiate when half of your lineup is getting that kind of ownership. And it's also not like Kansas City's an actual good offense. This is more so just a case of they're relatively affordable and they have a decent matchup against Irvin. I think it's just going to be kind of tough for me to get to that ownership when I can roster much, much better offenses at lower ownership.
Definitely need to talk about the A's side of this one as well. Greinke, slightly hittable. They are 6th in aggregate ownership, 10th in top stack, which honestly isn't all that bad given the size of this slate. They're 0.3% behind the Royals for 8th. So let's not act like there's some huge distinction between the two of them, at least in the data that we have right now. But they are 2nd in top value, 12% in fact, which allows them to come out in our stack score number 1. Where do you want to go here with Oakland, given the fact that they are basically free?
Yeah, I do think that to me, they're actually a little bit more appealing than Kansas City. Certainly not as much talent, but Jonah Bride's the only guy pulling double-digit ownership here. He has second base and third base eligibility. He's hitting second, so you can obviously just throw him into some lineups. Sean Murphy's getting 8.5%. He's the second most popular. Then you get Tony Kemp at 6%. After that, though, Laureano, Noisy, Brown, all like 3.5% owned. And Zach Greinke is just awful at this point. So far this season, a 6.5% strikeout percentage against lefties for Greinke, 14.5% against righties. Expected ISO against both sides of the plate is north of 200. So Oakland's really bad offensively, but Greinke is really bad as a pitcher as well. That combined with the value you're getting from Oakland does make them kind of interesting to me because not only will you be able to get good pitching around them, you'll be able to get to very good one-offs as well.
I had no idea what you were saying when you said Noisy. It took me a second to look at the Oakland lineup and be like, oh, got it. Yeah. I just wasn't paying attention. I was like, that can't be the way that anything's said. And then I saw it. This is just a really weird game here from an ownership perspective, from the pricing, the pitching that's on both sides. I want the game, but I also don't want it. I think I'm more interested in the A's than the Royals, but I don't like the A's at all as an actual team. It's kind of a mess.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get to the A's the way things look right now, but if I upload my lineups and see that I didn't get to the A's, I will not have any issue whatsoever.
No, that would not be mad one bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. They have 5 guys with MPEs. 2 of them have second, third. There's also another second baseman in the lineup. They got a second short. So 1, 2, they can put 4 separate guys at second base based on DK eligibility. Only 2 outfield eligibility spots. That's pretty hard to do. So weird team. Now, we mentioned Jonah Bride earlier, certainly in the mix for either your cash game second baseman or your cash game third baseman. Flat 2K in the 2-hole, pulling some ownership, going to be at least viable because of that price tag. Do you see Royals sneaking into cash lineups?
I don't think I get to the Kansas City guys. I'm probably playing Tim Anderson ahead of Witt.
Yeah.
Whit Merrifield is one of the more popular second basemen, but I think I would be more likely to either use Bride at second base, go to Nolan Gorman for less money, or really punt and go down even to Rengifo. So I guess if I got to a Kansas City guy, it would probably be Merrifield, but okay. I don't think I end up with Merrifield.
All righty. We'll take it to the Cardinals and the Cubs. Before we do that, hit that like button if you haven't done it yet. We need to run that number up, really smush it in the faces of everybody that's on live before lock. 5 run implied total for the Cards, 4 for the Cubs. Andre Payante and Kyle Hendricks. No ownership really going in here. Are you rostering either pitcher? I assume you're going to have all the Hendricks.
Yeah, as always. No, I don't have interest in either pitcher here.
Thoughts on Cardinals bats? 3rd in our top stack tool, 8th in aggregate ownership, and in a matchup against Kyle Hendricks. Think they're getting slept on a bit.
Yeah, I like getting to the Cards here. Hendricks just he's always been a pitcher that doesn't have a huge margin for error. because he doesn't throw hard. He's very reliant on locating and changing speeds. And then now, as he's getting older, that margin for error just gets even smaller. 162 expected ISO to righties so far this year, 309 to lefties. I mentioned Nolan Gorman a second ago. I think he's going a bit under owned at only 8%.
We just got an ownership update, by the way, just in case you want to grab that too.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
2 minutes.
He looks really, really good to me. Brendan Donovan looks fine, from the left side as well. I do wish that there were just more left-handed bats in this lineup in general, but Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado from the right side, certainly not going to be guys that you're upset about getting to either. And this team just isn't pulling much ownership. Right now on DraftKings, we have Gorman up to 10% now, but Tommy Edman, the next highest owned guy at 5%. So it's a spot that I like, and they're not pulling much ownership here.
Yeah, we're on the same page. I'm interested in the Cardinals. Gorman up to 10% now, but that's not going to slow me down. Are you trying to get to any Cubs bats on the opposite side?
Kind of neutral on them. The pricing's pretty favorable. We should be getting a new Cubs lineup soon, since apparently Jonathan Villar is no longer on the team. But with the exception of Wilson Contreras, everybody on this team is sub 4K. So Ian Happ looks pretty good at 3,600. Christopher Morel leading off at 3,400 seems like a pretty solid option as well. Payante so far this year, 305 pitches thrown to lefties, 389 to righties, 104 expected ISO to righties, 120 to lefties. So even though he doesn't strike a lot of guys out, he has done a pretty good job of limiting power so far. So I don't think the Cubs really stand out, but I do think that if you're looking for a value stack, they are very cheap.
Are there cash bats on either side that you'd be interested in? Doesn't really seem it. Gorman would be the only guy that you would kind of talk about. I guess.
Gorman would be the one that, if I get to any hitter from this game in cash, I'd expect it to be Gorman.
Alrighty. I got nothing else here if you want to keep it moving.
Me neither.
All right. Angels and Mariners, 5.1 run implied total for the Angels, 4.2 for Seattle. Michael Lorenzen and Chris Flexen, 3% aggregate ownership combined between the two. I like Lorenzen a little bit more than that. He's the guy that sort of stands out to me at the bottom of guy I would try to get to that isn't Mitch Keller, but I don't really care all that much. The more likely scenario is I'm avoiding pitching in this one.
Yeah, I mean, even in that range, I think I'd be more likely to go to Marquez and Dunning before I got to Lorenzen.
Fair. I don't really have a hot take here. It's 2.5% owned guy at 5% type stuff. It's meaningless to me. No Chris Flexen either. We got to talk here about the Angels in multiple ways. They are the number one stack from an ownership perspective. We have them 9th, 10th in top value, 4th in stack score. Obviously, Trout and Ohtani, and to a lesser degree, Ward and Walsh look good. Where do you come in here on this Angels team as a stack?
I expect that I will have a lot of Angels in cash and then probably not as much, at least in terms of 5-man stacks in tournaments. And it's not because I don't like the spot, because I do. I think this is one of the best spots on the slate. It's just a matter of their, hitters fail constantly in baseball, and you're just getting so much ownership going here. Flexen this year, 216 expected ISO to lefties, 245 to righties. It's a really, really good spot. It's going to be scary not being there, but I also just think you make more money over the course of a season by going to the Toronto, Dodgers, Cardinals, Red Sox type spots over the extremely popular Angels.
I could not agree more. And I don't really want to go to anything on the Mariners, at least not by priority. 17th in ownership.
I do like Jesse Winker quite a bit. He's 3,300. He is leading the team at 8% owned. But he's off to a really slow start this season in terms of his actual numbers. But his expected numbers have suggested that things should be turning around for him. I know he's hit a couple home runs recently as well. Against right-handed pitching this year, 208 plate appearances for Winker, 294 WOBA, 0.080 ISO, but a 381 expected WOBA, nearly 100 points higher, a 203 expected ISO, 120 points higher than his actual ISO. And then you're facing Lorenzen, who has only struck out 13% of lefties this year with a 227 expected ISO. So I do really like Jesse Winker individually. I think that JP Crawford looks okay. Taylor Trammell looks okay. But Winker is the one that really just stands out to me as a one-off.
We got to touch on the Angels quickly from a cash perspective. We've talked about them basically the entire show. You're expecting a high likelihood of having Trout and Ohtani in your cash lineup. Do you see Ward or Walsh coming along for the ride?
Yeah, so Walsh, I certainly think I'm going to have Ohtani and Trout. Walsh, I would I think there's a good chance that I end up going Walsh at first base and then playing Ohtani in the outfield. I would certainly be very happy with that. Ward is good, and I'm not going to be upset if I get there, but I think he is difficult just because, like, chances are I'm going to have Ohtani and Trout ahead of him. And if they're both in the outfield, that is 2 of my 3 outfield spots. So Ward certainly viable, just I think probably a little bit more difficult to get to. Similarly, Renhefo at $2,300, assuming he's batting 5th. Probably not the guy that I get to, but certainly at least could see him in, some potential builds.
In terms of my rankings, Ohtani is the highest ranked guy that's getting any ownership at first. But if you needed to bump him out of first, Walsh actually then is my 4th ranked first baseman just in general. Pretty easy to get there. I think Andrew Vaughn would probably be the next possible option at 3,900. After that, you're probably going all the way down to like a Kirilloff or something like that. Nothing on the Mariners from a cash perspective, correct?
Yeah. When I mentioned Winker individually, but that's not for cash purposes.
Sure. Padres and Phillies, 3.4 run implied total for the Pods, 3.7 for the Phillies. Mackenzie Gore and Aaron Nola. Gore 10% owned. Looks completely correct to me. Aaron Nola 40% owned as of right now. That's a pretty big number. I think it's justified. I just think it's a little too high.
Yeah, but it's another one of these spots where a lot of it's just going to depend on what stacks I'm getting to. Like if I'm playing the Angels, I wouldn't expect to have much Aaron Nola in my Angels lineups because it's going to be that much more difficult to differentiate if you're going that route. But if I'm playing teams like the Braves or the Red Sox or whoever, there's no real reason that I can't play Nola, assuming that the pricing works. So I do think he is the preferred pay up option. You have the Padres without Tatis, you have them without Machado. Just a pretty good spot for Nola.
Yeah. My only concern really is that I don't think that the gap between Nola and it appears that I'm in a bigger minority than a lot of the industry right now. I don't think the gap between Verlander and Nola is as big as a 40-6 gap in ownership. So I have a lot more interest in getting to Verlander and some large field GPPs. If I'm running some chalkier stacks, I will happily pay the extra $300 to swap to Verlander, or I'll also be just taking a discount and going to Manoah. Don't want to undersell Nola. I don't want to undersell Nola, though. He looks really, really good.
Yeah, I was going to say also, I think there's a good chance that in a lot of my lineups, I just end up like kind of living in the Jeffrey Springs, Dane Dunning, Mitch Keller, Herman Marquez price ranges.
You didn't even mention Alex Cobb. Breaks my heart, but we had that conversation already. Gore, do you have any real hot take? 10 to 15% owned seems about right. A guy you get to, a guy you just don't prioritize.
Yeah, good pitcher, relatively difficult matchup, fair price tag at 9,100. Just kind of ownership looks like it's where it should be.
Okay. The Padres are the 27th owned stack. Clearly, that's because Aaron Nola is 40% owned. The Phillies are 22% or 22nd in aggregate ownership. A lot of that probably because of Gore and the fact that this just isn't that kind of game and Gore's good. Are you rostering either side of this from a stack perspective?
I doubt it. If I went to either side, I would get to the Phillies first and just take some shots on guys like Hoskins and Castellanos and the very good hitters that are likely to be at the top of the Phillies lineup. But realistically, I just think both of these pitchers are very good.
Do you want to put a bet on this game?
What's the bet?
I'll bet you, I'll let you set the odds, that a Nola wins today.
Yeah, I like the chances there.
Okay. Just checking. For a second, I wasn't really paying attention. I was like, how the hell do I have Aaron Nola hitting 5th for the Padres? There are no cash options outside of pitching for Nola. There are no cash options from a hitting perspective, correct?
Correct.
And would be very surprising to see a non-Springs Nola cash combination.
I wouldn't be shocked if, I think you could go Keller Springs. I mean, not Keller, Kelly Springs.
Okay. I see where you're going with that. That would be interesting. Diamondbacks and Tigers. We got 2 to go before we turn it over to the live before lock crew. I assume that's just Greg and Eric. So if it is, great. If it's not, say hi to the people that are after us. But
Red
hit that like
hitting
button.
8th for the Angels.
Okay. 4.7 run implied total for the D-backs, 3.8 for the Tigers. Merrill Kelly and Ronnie Garcia. Garcia pulling no ownership. I'm probably a little less interested in him now than I was earlier, but it doesn't really matter. We're talking about like the 12th best arm at or worse today. Merrill Kelly, though, 23% owned, 7,900. He's actually pulling ownership on FanDuel at 8,900 too. I guess that's what happens when you face the Tigers. Talk to me about Merrill Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, he's just kind of a middle of the road pitcher, but he's got a great matchup against the Tigers. Detroit's active roster has a 74 WRC plus, by far the worst in baseball. Their ISO is 104, just recently got above the 100 mark. 23.9% strikeout percentage as well. So it's just a really good spot for Kelly. He's reasonably priced. He stands out projection wise in that range. We've kind of alluded to it a couple of times already. When you look at his ownership compared to other pitchers in that price range, I don't think he should be 10 times as popular as Dunning or Marquez. Probably shouldn't even be twice as popular as Keller. But, again, you're just, as long as you've differentiated elsewhere with your bats, he is going to be the pitcher that projects the best in that range. And then I get to a good amount here.
How in the world are there 780 people in here and we're not over 200 likes? That should be criminal. You guys should go to jail for not hitting the like button. That doesn't seem like too extreme of a take. Hit that thumbs up. Let's get north of 200 quickly. Do you anticipate getting to Garcia? I think we had better things to say about him earlier today than we probably do now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still he's the guy, if I have to pay all the way down, that I think I probably get to. He's at least got some semblance of talent. He has struck out 27% of hitters so far this year, 8 relief appearances, 5 starts, projects for like a 21.5% strikeout percentage. He has a 3.47 xFIP so far this year. I do think he's underpriced. I don't really know how necessary it's going to be to go all the way down to him, but I would certainly rather play him than like Greinke, for example.
Really need the sex bots to start hitting the like button before they get banned. All right, let's talk Diamondbacks quickly. They are 5th in aggregate ownership. We have them as the 15th ranked stack. Their top 4 hitters are 9 to 16% owned. Do you like targeting Garcia here? Do you anticipate getting to Diamondbacks bats? I know you're going to talk about Alek Thomas, at least from a cash perspective.
Yeah, Thomas stands out at 2,900. He's one of the top hitting prospects in baseball. He's hitting second, has the platoon advantage. I like him quite a bit in cash. Ketel Marte, I think, is one of the better second base options on the slate. Dalton Varsho looks fine. Christian Walker looks okay. From a cash standpoint, I don't think I would get to any of those guys outside of Thomas and maybe Marte. But this is just another team where I think it's an okay spot, but I don't really like the ownership that's coming in here. I would like to just be on other teams in tournaments probably.
Tigers are 18th in ownership. If you need a value stack, are you going to the Detroit Tigers since they are our number 1 top value?
I don't totally hate it. I mean, I do in the sense that they are awful, but
Kelly ownership too.
Yeah, there's not much ownership. They're really cheap. You have Riley Green at 2,200. Reyes, Baez, Grossman, your boy Candelario. It's not like the worst group of guys in the world. Yeah. But kind of like with Oakland, if I get to the Tigers, I won't be surprised if I play the Tigers, but I will certainly be happy if I upload my lineups and see that I did not stack the worst team in baseball.
Alek Thomas, relevant in cash. Nobody else here. A cash
Thomas,
I got you
Marte,
likely get to.
But I kind of doubt it.
Okay. Let's close this bad boy out before we hand it over to Live Before Lock. Again, you don't have to go anywhere. Stay on this stream. They'll take you up to 705. 4.5 run implied total for the Giants and a putrid 3-run implied total for the Reds. Yes, they are the full run line underdogs here. Alex Cobb and Graham Ashcraft. Nothing going on for Ashcraft. Alex Cobb is 6% owned. I think he's getting slept on because of the aggressive ownership to Springs and Kelly. The only problem is we don't totally know how deep he can go in this game. If we had any word on that, I think that would help dictate the decision. If you think he can go 5 innings, probably deserves a little bit more ownership than 6%, but do you think you get to Cobb?
I doubt I get to much. Maybe the 5% mark makes sense. He does have good strikeout stuff. He does have a pretty good matchup against Cincinnati. He's in a good park. He has all of that working for him. The issue is just that he threw 60 pitches last game in his first game back. It's hard for me to think he's going out there and giving you 6 or 7 innings here and throwing 90 pitches. I think you can get 5 innings, get 70, 75 pitches probably. But on a slate this big, it's not just a matter of needing Cobb to beat Springs or needing Cobb to beat Kelly. You need him to probably give you, 16 to 20 DraftKings points ideally. And that's kind of a hard ask if he is in fact limited. So, if he randomly ends up in a lineup here and there, that's fine. It's not like I'm Xing him out of my player pool or anything, but I'd like him a lot if he were fully stretched out. And I think the field would too.
Yeah, that would really change up the mid-range. if we thought that he had the ability to go a little bit deeper. Are you just going to run a 5-man red stack for cash?
Yeah, of course. Anytime you can just jam the Reds in cash, what can go wrong?
Yeah. It's crazy how many names on the Reds lineup today are like high-end former big-time prospect, like Moose Tacos, Almora, like Senzel, I think, was like a first-round pick back in the day. I'm sure Votto was. I can't remember because he's been in the league for 800 years. But it's just a really weird lineup to see some of those names that used to be top level prospects.
And then
Giants
and Solano thrown in the middle.
Giants are 19th in ownership. Are you trying to stack them up against Ashtray?
I do like the Giants here.
Okay.
Ashcraft has been okay at limiting power so far this year, but it's also a small sample. And the Giants, we don't have their lineup yet, but I'm assuming you're going to get Peterson, Yastrzemski, Belt, all from the left side, all guys with power. And then, some of the right-handed bats in this lineup aren't bad either. Flores, Ruff, both have some power as well. Not a great park, but I am just kind of interested in the Giants given that they are not projected for much ownership.
No, they are not.
Are they? Oh, they're 1% aggregate ownership projection.
Yeah. Is there anything else on this entire slate you want to touch on? Anything to sum up? Anything? Your favorite stack, favorite pitching combo?
As far as stacks go, I just as long as ownership holds how it is, I like Toronto, the Dodgers, the Cardinals, the Red Sox. Pitching wise, I'm pretty on board with most of the chalk pitching. I will say that I think there's a good chance I get to more of the mid-range guys that just aren't getting much ownership, like Dunning or Marquez.
Okay. Well, there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. And due to the threat of jail time, you guys got it up to 230 likes. Seems like you guys can get to 250. That would be very nice for the Live Before Lock guys. Adam and I are going to get out of here. We'll let Greg and Eric take you up to 705. Adam and I are off to just enjoy our weekends. Separately, of course, but we're going to enjoy our weekends. Good luck, everybody. Win some money. I will talk to you guys again on Monday, and I believe Adam will do the same. Adios, everybody.
And a shout out yesterday to UC DFS God on Twitter. He messaged me a screenshot of a bet that he won yesterday, nearly $20,000. He had some parlays on overs in a pretty high scoring game yesterday between the Yankees and the Astros. It was a late inning comeback by the Yankees that ultimately helped our guy here on Twitter win mass amounts of money. And of course, also Yordan Alvarez, who in his tweet here, he said, shout out to Yordan Alvarez for abusing the short porch of Yankee Stadium, which very favorable ballpark for Yordan Alvarez. He's a very popular play in DFS as well and helped our guy here win a whole bunch of money. So congrats to you. And for this, I'm also going to give you 1 free week of our premium betting Discord. Message me on Twitter so I could hook you up with that. It seems you could afford it right now, but I want to give you the free week anyway. And now to get into tonight's picks, these are my favorite bets for Friday night slate. To start us out, I'm going with a pitcher in a really difficult matchup. That is Ian Anderson against the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I actually like the over for his strikeouts. And I know just on the surface, who wants to take an over strikeouts prop against the Dodgers? I rarely do. But Ian Anderson's one of the better young pitchers in baseball. The number's only 4.5, and it's plus money on the over. So why is the number set so low? Well, for starters, Ian Anderson has had a downtick in strikeouts this year, 19.7% K rate, well down from his career average of 23%. But there is some reason to be optimistic. Most of that Anderson has pitched much better in his recent outings. Last time out against the Cubs, he struck out 6 hitters. The time before that, he did have a bad outing against the Nats where he struck out 3. But before that, 5 strikeouts, 9 strikeouts, 5 strikeouts, 6 strikeouts. So more often than not, he has been over that 4.5 mark as of late. And once again, we're getting plus money on the over. So the matchup is something that is a little bit concerning to me, but I like to rely on our data in these kind of spots. We have Anderson winning 61% of the time. With when you have plus money on that number, it's a pretty good bet, 31% expected ROI. That's actually the number one bet that we have in our player prop model today. So I'm going to start us off over 4.5 strikeouts for Ian Anderson at plus 115. If you guys would like $200 for free, this is an offer you guys should be taking advantage of. If you sign up at BetMGM for the first time, either using the promo code OSMLB or sign up using the link in the description box below, BetMGM is going to give you $200 when you sign up for the first time. Here's all you need to do to take advantage of that offer. Sign up, like I said, either using the promo code or the link below, and then you place a $10 bet on any MLB money line, and they give you $200. That's all you need to do. I try to give out the best bets possible, positive ROI plus EV bets, but it's not quite free money, and that is what BetMGM is giving you when you sign up. So this offer isn't going to be available for long. We had it for a little bit on the channel, then it went away. Now it's coming back. Sign up over at BetMGM, get $200 for free. The next bet I'm looking at, it is another pitcher prop, another strikeout prop. And actually, I'm realizing all the bets I like today are pitcher props. So pitcher prop Friday, lots of strikeout props on the board. Well, a lot of games, and a lot of these numbers do look really favorable for me. The next one, Graham Ashcroft, under 3.5 strikeouts, another plus money bet that we're getting at plus 130. It's a bet that we have winning 56% of the time in our player model. So close to a coin flip, but a coin flip we're getting plus 130 odds on. So that does look like a really favorable number. When it comes to Ashcraft, this is just not a guy who generates strikeouts. Only a 13.5% K rate this year. So that's pretty concerning in itself in terms of the upside of the pitcher individually. And then he has a matchup against the San Francisco Giants, who strike out right around league average against right-handed pitching, but have a well above average offense against righties, one of the top 10 offenses in the league against right-handed pitching. And then also you just look at some of the data when it comes to Ashcraft. He doesn't work all that deep into games. So his last couple of starts, 5 innings, 4 2/3 innings. When you're already a guy that doesn't strike out a very high percentage of the hitters you face, and then you also don't work deep into games, it's just problematic in terms of racking up strikeouts. So he's topped out at 5 strikeouts this year. We've also seen him with starts with 2, 1, 3 strikeouts. Actually, his last start against the San Francisco Giants, he made it through 6 1/3 innings, but he only struck out 1 batter over those 6 1/3 innings. So I think this is a good pitcher to take the under on strikeouts with, particularly when we're getting plus money on the under. So the next bet here, like I said, I really do like under 3.5 Ks for Ashcraft. We're getting plus 130 money on it. Coming into the season, I was really not sure what to expect from Luis Severino. We haven't seen him pitch a full season since 2018. So mounting injuries for Severino, it's been a lot of time off, and you just don't know with something like that. Is he going to be the same pitcher when he comes back? What is his velocity going to look like? And to this point, he's answered all of those questions and then some. Luis Severino's velocity, 96.3 miles per hour. So hasn't lost any steam on his fastball. And then the results have also been excellent for him. 3.27 ERA, 2.65 expected ERA. In fact, you can make a case that Severino's better than he's ever been. And then when it comes to the strikeout stuff, 29.9% K rate. So everything is intact for Severino, despite missing a few years due to injury. It hasn't had any impact on any of his pitching abilities. And then you look at the strikeout prop from today, 5.5. That's a really low number for a pitcher who's as talented as Severino. And I understand he's a tough matchup against the Houston Astros, who did a bunch of damage yesterday, ended up scoring 6 runs in a 6-7 loss to the Yankees. But Severino has such good stuff. I'm not even sure it matters who it is that he's pitching against. And he's been so far over this 5.5 strikeout prop in his recent start. It just seems way too low to me. Recent outings, and the last one, a really tough matchup on the road against Toronto Blue Jays. 9 strikeouts for Severino. The strikeouts before then, 10 against the Cubs, 10 against the Tigers, 8 against the Tampa Bay Rays. He did have 1 game against the White Sox where he was under that mark with 5, but then his other starts, 7 against the Orioles and then 8 against the Toronto Blue Jays. Those are all of his starts since he saw his pitch restriction just come away. So earlier in the year, his strikeout numbers were down a little bit in terms of counting stats, but that was only because the Yankees were trying to limit his pitches as he was working his way back.
What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome to the MLB Live Before Lock show presented by Odd Chopper. I'm Eric Lindquist. We're going to be breaking down this slate. We've got some lovely MLB stuff going on here in the streets. But first, hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. If you're joining us for the first time, if you're one of the 750 people who have never been over here to Stokastic, great to have you. Happy to have you. Stick around. The water's warm here. We will treat you well. But one of the guys who's going to treat you guys well by giving you downright great, exceptional analysis. I don't know. This is the 48th show we've done together this week. I get to see his lovely face again. He's Greg Ehrenberg. He's rocking a fantastic, I believe that's a Nirvana t-shirt. Is that what that is?
You know, we've done too many shows together when you know my entire wardrobe.
I do.
Also, I haven't gone clothes shopping in a little bit either, but you know, it was, I don't know, what was it? 6 months ago, I went and got like 30 new t-shirts, and it was really exciting when I got to unveil all of them on shows. People were leaving super chats to see but I can't go buy new clothes every time I wear it once. So now it's just everybody's seen the shirts at this point.
I just wear black long sleeves. Like that's I have maybe 10 of those. Like maybe 10, 12 of these.
what are you, like a cartoon character where they open up their wardrobe and it's just the same thing laid out, the same exact outfit? Doug Funny opens up his closet. He's got that same turtleneck in there 30 times.
I don't know. I'm confident. I feel like a handsome fellow most of the time. I just feel like I waste a lot of time thinking about what I'm going to wear sometimes. And so just the go-to on a day when I'm not thinking about it, or if I'm not golfing where you have to wear a polo or something like that, just a black long sleeve seems to be the jam. Feels good. Feels comfortable. Feels right.
It doesn't bore you though?
No.
Oh, I'm not so excited putting on my shirts in the morning.
But here's the thing. You have like a very cool sense of that. Like for me, a lot of my t-shirts, I have a lot of X-Men t-shirts. I have Cyclops, I have Wolverine, I have the all encompassing X-Men, I have Iron Man t-shirts. But you have like very nuanced, like, I don't know. Mine are just like all Marvel shirts.
I don't know if I have any Marvel shirts. I like Marvel. I just don't know if I don't think I've seen anywhere I'm like, oh, I want to get that shirt.
I feel like I'm way too much like Jason Roslin. I'm starting to feel that. So I need to move on. We need to start the show because it's making me feel uncomfortable. Tyler Zander in the house, shaking his head. Yes. Yeah. Jason Roslin, I love you. It's in no way. We're kindred spirits, even if you go to Disney 99 times more than I ever would in my entire life. But let's get to it here, my friend. Anything that sticks out to you on this slate before we dive in?
Well, it's a big slate. We've got a lot of games. Nearly every single team is playing today. And the pitcher ownership is still incredibly concentrated. So the one that stands out to me the most is Jeffrey Springs being 50% owned on DraftKings and 31% on FanDuel. We'll talk more about this in a second. It's clearly a great spot against the Pittsburgh Pirates, but boy, I do not get anywhere near that number when I run my lineups.
Yeah, nowhere. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a really uncomfortable session of DFS here, watching Jeffrey Springs pitch. I mean, Pittsburgh's better, right? They feel like they have a better lineup. I look at their lineup and it doesn't make me vomit the way that it did a month ago.
Well, so they have a lot of exciting young players. I don't know if that means the lineup is good. So like
probably true.
O'Neal Cruz has been good for fantasy purposes. His actual numbers have been fairly abysmal at the big league level, though. So, when you get into just looking at the fantasy numbers, yeah, for sure. He's had some good fantasy games. He has the ability to steal bases.
He's played 4 games.
Well, I'm incorporating his minor league numbers into this as well.
Gotcha. That's very true. I said he was just very unenthusiastic in AAA. I will say.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of been my take as well, although, here's what we've seen from him for the entire year. He played 55 games at AAA with a 104 WRC plus. He's played 4 games at the major league level with a 51 WRC plus. Overall, it's not really an impressive season. So to the point, and it's funny too, because relative to his ownership, I'm way underneath the field on Jeffrey Springs. I think it's a good matchup for him. I just think he's picking up too much ownership.
I think that's probably the right way of looking at it is, it's only one lineup spot. This is the spot that Alex Baker in his article, go check that out at Stokastic. I know that Adam's been talking about it frequently too, where you're just more inclined. It's one roster spot. Pitcher, you can generally be chalkier. I'm going to have Jeffrey Springs. I just don't see why. There are other guys in this range just for a little bit more expensive, technically 500, 600 more. But they're so appealing in the 9K range that I find it very hard to believe that I'm going to get anywhere close to 35%, 40% of a guy who's coming in with 50% ownership there. Has he been good? No question. Does he have a great matchup? No question. But, you still need to have the results in the box score. So we'll see kind of how it goes. But let's get to it. Looking at the top of the board here, the first guy to really speak about is Aaron Nola. I mean, you did the great Jeffrey Springs conversation. I don't even know if there's anything else to hash out there. Aaron Nola feels like the guy that I'm more inclined to get a little bit over. I know San Diego has been really, really good absent Manny Machado. And now Manny Machado, did we get that lineup? Because I'm assuming that it's
another shitty lineup.
Oh, great. Well, then I love Aaron Nola. He was always going to be the guy that I'm more inclined to go overweight to. What are you planning to do with Aaron Nola?
Yeah, I like Nola as well. And I don't have some of the same concerns with him that I have about Jeffrey Springs. Springs has pitched really well this year, but some of the work has been out of the bullpen. He doesn't really go as deep into games. And then also, you've got Springs picking up, about 50% more ownership than Nola is, where Nola is going to be in 35% of the field's lineups. Springs is going to be in 50% of the field's lineups. So when you just consider the ownership split between the two of them, I'm definitely more comfortable with the Nola chalk than the Springs chalk. If you guys are playing cash games today, go ahead, go play Jeffrey Springs. No issues there. And even in tournaments, you can get some Springs exposure as well. But if you're running lineups where it's like Nola, Springs, there aren't any offenses that are that chalky today. But if you're playing one of the more popular offenses with Springs and Nola, it's just going to be really hard to differentiate yourself. And I feel better about the Nola chalk than the Springs chalk. For one, I think Nola's a better pitcher than Jeffrey Springs. But then also, point two, this is a Padres offense that overall for the season has not been good against right-handed pitching. And now you have their best lineup out of the order in Manny Machado. It looks like he's going to be back soon, but obviously that's not today.
All right. Well, for FanDuel purposes, I'm not playing there today. If you are, though, they're pulling 55% between the two of them, Jeffrey Springs, Aaron Nola. First part of the question, which one are you more inclined to get to in a tournament allocation of 150? Which one do you want to get to more of? And then secondly, who would be your favorite pivot in both of the price ranges off of those two on FanDuel?
All right. So on FanDuel relative, it's still going to be Nola for me. And also on slates of this size, it's not that difficult to pay up for a pitcher. You get all of these guys, like, for instance, Jonah Bride. Do I think he's a great hitter? No, except he's in a pretty good matchup against Zach Greinke. He's extremely cheap, hitting towards the top of the order. And you get like a dozen of those guys to play on a slate of this size, and it's not that hard to spend up for the premier starting pitchers. So I like Nola more than Springs on FanDuel. I do on DraftKings as well. If I had to pivot off of Nola, I guess I'll say Severino's my best pivot. I don't think there's one guy, though. I think there's a bunch of guys that make sense. Like, I think it makes sense to get some exposure to Manoah. It makes sense to get exposure to Verlander. But in terms of Severino, I think the upside is so significant. He's pitched really well this year, and especially as of late. And to bring a betting tie-in into this, Severino's strikeout prop. Have you seen it today? I don't know if you built lineups on Prize Picks and if it's the same as what it is.
I know that he's 6 over on Prize Picks. I don't know what the number is at sports books.
5.5, which just seems really low for Severino.
Yep.
And I understand it's mostly driven by the matchup, but his stuff is so good. How much does it matter? His last start, he pitched on the road in Toronto. He struck out 9 hitters. His starts before that, 10 against the Cubs, 10 against the Tigers, all right, easy matchups, but still 10 is a lot of strikeouts. 8 against the Rays in Tampa Bay, 5 against the White Sox. That was a little bit of a down start. But then before that, 7 against the Orioles, 8 again against the Blue Jays. Ever since he's been taken off this pitch count restriction, we've seen nothing but strikeout upside from him. So 5.5 feels like a very off line for me. I like taking the over, and I think he's a good contrarian pitching option on both DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yeah, you get Jason Castro in that lineup. The guy strikes out at over a 45% clip. That's useful. He hits like 100. Hilarious. You get Jake Myers there. Limited, well, not really a limited sample. Nearly 31% K percentage there. Aledmus Diaz, then it just falls off a cliff. Everybody sub 20% there. I will say, I think if I'm going to go between Verlander and Severino, though, I kind of feel weird, but I think I slightly prefer getting to Verlander. It's not that hard to get over on both. I'm probably going to get over on both. I know that it's about a 4% difference in terms of K percentage, but I feel like the lineup for the Yankees, as much as I have loved stacking them up, and I'm sure I'll have a couple stacks as well today, there are strikeouts available. You have 23% or higher on Higashioka, Judge, Donaldson, Stanton. That's 4 of 9. A little bit easier strikeout matchup. I mean, Castro, you better face him twice. You better ring him up at least once. But like, I do think the Yankees are a little bit more gettable in terms of strikeouts than what Houston is. So I'm looking at getting to around 15%, 20% Justin Verlander. Is he somebody you're planning to roster?
Yeah, and before you ask me like who my favorite pivot is, I went with Severino because I had to pick one guy. But the other point I was making is I think all 3 of these guys at the top end, Severino, Verlander, and Manoah, all of them are sensible pivots off of Nola. The one thing that just has me slightly preferring Severino and getting more exposure to him than the other guys is that he's pitching at home, whereas the other 2 are on the road.
Sean V, Yordan is going to hit against anybody. He has a higher expected slugging than Aaron Judge this season. Like, chill out. He hits everybody well. It's like when you come in and say, oh, I think Mike Trout, he owns Seattle. He owns a lot of ballparks in Major League Baseball. Spoiler alert. That's how it works. But you're still, well, I don't want to say love, but you're still appreciated. We love having you here. Hit the like button, my friend. Let's keep it going down the board. I said the 9K range I find to be very fascinating for tournament purposes. We've got 3 guys that have over a top 2 pitcher percentage of 10%, that being Manoah, Urias and Gore. I think all three of them do bear some consideration. I feel the best about Manoah going up against Milwaukee. It is on the road here. Mackenzie Gore, good pitcher's park, but I don't know. It still feels a little bit iffy for me. I'm not sure if you have a lean in the 9K range. I'll open up to you. One pitcher on DraftKings to be overweight to for DraftKings purposes. Who's your favorite?
In the 9K range?
Yes.
That is Michael Kopech. And a lot of that's driven by he's pitching against the Baltimore Orioles. And if you consider the other guys, the best matchup in this range is Jeffrey Springs. But you asked me who I want to be overweight to. And if you want to be overweight to Jeffrey Springs, he has to be in more than half of your lineup. So that's a tall ask. As for the other guys here, Mackenzie Gore, fairly difficult matchup against the Phillies. Actually, Manoah's in the 9K range over on DK, so he would also be a sensible one. But Michael Kopech as well. So those would be my two, actually, Manoah and Kopech. Manoah being 9,500. He's pitching against the Brewers. Manoah's strikeouts have been down a little bit this year, but still the swing strike rate is there. We have seen a little bit more strikeout upside from him as of late. Manoah and Kopech, those are my preferred options in like that 8 to 9K range. Obviously, if Springs was less popular, he would be a guy that I would like to get to, but a little bit too much popularity for me in tournaments.
Yep. Manoah is my guy too. I like that. Kopech, I'm not necessarily as high. Baltimore's starting to put some outings together. That's pretty ancillary Sean V type analysis. I apologize. But for the most part, I look at the top pitchers page as well. He's got the lowest in that range outside of Cal Quantrill, 8,800. No, thank you is probably the right way to say that against Boston, but I'm going to be getting to quite a bit of Manoah over that 11.2% number. That's for sure. Urias, I don't really find myself rostering a whole lot of. I understand that there's a ton of positive leverage to go his direction. I just don't think we're going to get enough strikeouts. There's enough ammunition on the other side with Atlanta too. Don't feel like screwing around with it, but as we pull down the board even further, Merrill Kelly is a guy that's getting a ton of attention at 7,900. And I get it. Detroit against right-handed pitching, always going to be something that you can basically just blindly play. Merrill Kelly's a serviceable pitcher, but I'm not sure about the strikeout rate being enough that I really want to be getting there in any kind of a capacity. Is he your favorite target in this kind of range outside of Jeffrey Springs? And if not, who else are you going to be rostering for cheaper?
It depends how much cheaper we're talking, because I think there are some punt guys that warrant some consideration. But as I run my lineups, there are so many cheap plays available to use as plugs and punts on FanDuel and DraftKings. I generally don't see a need to go all that cheap at pitcher.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair. Is he a guy that you're looking at rostering yourself, Merrill Kelly?
Let's see. So in my builds, I got to Merrill Kelly's in 8% of my lineups. So that's well underneath the field. Mm-hmm. It makes him a viable option. But if I have to punt at pitcher, I find myself going much cheaper than Merrill Kelly at 7,900. And relative to our data we have on Merrill Kelly, you mentioned it's a really good spot against Tigers. It's one of the worst offense in baseball against right-hand pitching. They strike out a whole bunch against righties. But Merrill Kelly individually isn't all that great of a pitcher, and he's going to be really popular today. He's the third most popular pitcher on DraftKings behind Jeffrey Springs and Aaron Nola. Over on FanDuel, we've got Merrill Kelly picking up 8.5%. So he's also the third most popular pitcher over on FanDuel. I think it's a good spot for him, clearly, against the Tigers as a right-handed pitcher. I don't think he's the third best pitching option today, though.
No, definitely not. I'm well underweight to Merrill Kelly as well. And I like Merrill Kelly. I like him. I like Zach Allen. I like their two main pitchers there in Arizona. I think they're pretty serviceable guys, but at this kind of ownership, I'm not going to get there against Detroit. Not really going to play Detroit on the other side. Just going to kind of hope that nothing happens in that game would be kind of the ideal way to go about it. I'm going to open up the entire board to you because I feel like we could kind of nitpick on a number of different guys. We have people who are getting ownership, like even Alex Cobb is garnering a little bit of attention. Mitch Keller, guys here, sub 8,500 that are kind of sticking out that aren't Jeffrey Springs, aren't Merrill Kelly, but are other dudes. Dane Dunning, somebody that I'm generally going to get to a little bit against Washington. Who do you find yourself wanting to punt with or playing on the cheaper end? Who are you starting to roster more for DK purposes?
Yeah, so I think there are some guys that we could take shots on. None of them are in a significant portion of my lineups. If I had to pick out one guy to get to, it's German Marquez. He's on the road, and his numbers always end up being a little bit weird because I think of Marquez as a really talented pitcher, but he totally gets screwed by having to make half of the starts for his career at Coors Field. And he has good stuff. He has good strikeout stuff. He got off to a really slow start this season, and he has pitched better as of late. There's been a lot of difficult matchups for Marquez, which is going to happen twofold. Number one, half his starts coming Coors Field, and then he also has to face the offenses in the NL West, which could be brutal. He has to face the Dodgers. He has to face the Giants. So that's never going to be all that easy for him. His last start was against the Padres at Coors Field. His start before that was against the Padres on the road in San Diego. Then he had to pitch against the Giants. Then he's making a Coors Field start against the Marlins, a Coors Field start against the Mets. So it's been a really difficult strength of schedule for him, which is why I kind of put his numbers in the trash a little bit, and I put not all that much weight into it. I know the Twins have a good offense, but all things considered, this is one of the easier matchups Marquez has had this year.
Yeah, I'm going to roster some Twins too. I can see getting some Marquez. I don't completely hate it. He's got top 2 pitcher value percentage of 12.2%. I think that stands out. Anybody in the double digits there. Can I interest you in any Mitch Keller? This is kind of the guy that I'm starting to land on a little bit at 6,700. It's a Tampa Bay lineup that, for the most part, not too enticing. You get Randy Arozarena and G-Man Choi leading off. They can be serviceable, but both north of a 25% strikeout rate. You get Josh Lowe batting cleanup here, 37%, 35% Luke Raley, strikeout rate, 26.5% for Wells. And Brett Phillips, whenever I see him in a lineup, I lick my chops. I'm just like, all right, 40+% K percentage at the very end of the tail end of the lineup. 2 times around on that is very useful. I find myself getting to quite a bit of him, even with his low 18.6% K percentage. Is he somebody that you're rostering at all?
No, the matchup against the Rays, it's still not really an easy one. And the other thing, too, is I just don't know that Mitch Keller is a starting pitcher in the big leagues. I think they should try him out in the bullpen. They did it a little bit earlier in the year, and it kind of went okay. But I just don't know that he has enough pitches or the ability to work deep into games consistently. And there's been a pretty big drop-off in his numbers as a starter this year. As a reliever, he's a 22.2% strikeout rate as a starter. That's 18.2. His xFIP as a starter, 4.48. And then his FIP as a reliever, it's right around 3. So I do have some real concerns with Mitch Keller in terms of he kind of just has a fastball. He doesn't know where the ball is going. And he throws really hard. I bought into him did you buy into him in the offseason? I can't remember.
Yeah, I liked Mitch Keller. Yeah, we liked him. We both did. He was on my season long team. He was like a cast off in a trade in my 1K league. So whatever.
He was throwing the ball really hard in spring training, and I thought that was going to matter. It's carried over to the regular season. He's throwing harder. It just doesn't matter for shit once he gets on the mound, though, because he hasn't been any good. And I mean, I don't think that German Marquez's numbers this year are significantly better than Mitch Keller's. Marquez has had his troubles as well, but I think he's more talented than Mitch Keller. I'm kind of writing off Mitch Keller for now because we've seen this with young Pittsburgh Pirates pitchers, highly regarded prospects, good stuff. They struggle in Pittsburgh. You know where they wake up is when they go elsewhere. So Mitch Keller, here's what's going to happen. Mitch Keller's going to go to the Astros 3 years from now. He's going to become really good all of a sudden. That's when we buy into Mitch Keller. For right now, when he's on the Pirates, I'm off of him.
Greg, expert at betting futures, also just flat out tells the future. There you go. I don't know how to bet on Mitch Keller going to Houston, but that actually makes some sense to me because I do like his pitch mix. I think he's somebody that I think could succeed elsewhere. Everybody sucks in Pittsburgh, except for hopefully our boy O'Neal Cruz. Last guy that I'm going to bring up. And I'm not sure if this is going to if I can sell you on this guy. I feel pretty gross even recommending it. Can you guess my favorite punt that I have 12% of my lineups? The favorite is relative, but can you guess which guy on the cheap end I'm going to get to the most?
Is it somebody that you've rostered before this year?
No.
Okay, so
I couldn't. If that's a clue.
All right, so it's Andre Palante then.
Yeah, it is, and I don't expect the K percentage to really be anything. If you go through like 2019 in A-ball, 9.59 K per 9, 6.12 Ks per 9 here this season. I know that I'm just reading it off the Fangraphs page, but part of that is the Zips and Steamer projection are not that enticing on him, but he's found a way to just kind of survive at the big league level. And if I'm going to completely pay up for an offense that nobody's getting to, if I want to get the expensive, God forbid, you play Trout and Ohtani and they end up donging him today because I'm shorting both of them relative to their ownership. But either way, theoretically, if I'm getting up to pay for them, I'll probably play some Yankees. I'll probably play some Houston, even against the phenomenal pitchers in that spot. But Palante's the guy who can kind of do it. 5,500. The Cubs, middle of the road offense in terms of strikeouts, in terms of power, nothing all that enthusiastic about it. He's just found a way to survive. I know that that's not necessarily something that we're going to be seeing long-term from him, according to Zips and Steamer, but I still feel like he can be a serviceable pure punt with this ground ball rate, which has been through the roof. Is Andre Palante somebody I can talk you into?
If I needed the salary savings, sure. I have him in 2% of lineups right now. But once again, the main thing for me is I just don't need the salary savings that much. The cheap pitcher I get to the most today, I mentioned before, is Herman Marquez, and that's 9% of him. I just don't think it's all that necessary on a slate of this size to punt all that often at pitcher. So relative to his salary, yeah, I think he's a good value play. He's a positive matchup against the Cubs. The Cubs offense has gone crazy in some games as of late, but it's still not really a good offense. Also, one other positive for Palante is he does seem to be stretched out now. His last 2 starts, he's gone 5 2/3 innings and 5 1/3 innings. Earlier in the year, he's pitching out of the bullpen. He was a long reliever, but still we were seeing outings, 3 innings, 3 1/3. So you move into the starting rotation, you start to get concerned. All right, realistically, how many innings could he pitch? 5 2/3 last time out. I don't think there's any reason to think he can't pitch 5 or 6 innings. So points per dollar relative to his price. Yeah, I understand. For DraftKings purposes, absolutely unnecessary on FanDuel, but I just don't need the salary savings.
Yep. All right. I'm going to have a dash of it. I said, nearly 10%, or just over 10% as it stands right now. We shall see where it comes through in the wash as we finish up. But first, before we jump over, anything else from pitchers for you, Greg?
We should talk about Jeffrey Springs a little bit more because he's the most popular pitcher by a mile.
Don't want to. He's very popular. He's in a fantastic spot. You're just hoping that from a game theory perspective, if you're going to be 35% of him, just be aware who you're stacking him up with in those 35% of lineups. If you want to go north of him, I get it, but I find 8,500 for him different than like when you get a Nola that would be facing Pittsburgh or something like that, where that would just be kind of a jam spot.
Yeah, and I'm still very unsure on how good he is. He's 29 years old. He was an unranked prospect who's been pitching out of the bullpen for his entire career.
Yeah. There's a lot of question marks. He's not Aaron Nola. He's not Luis Severino. He's not Justin Verlander. He's not any of these guys. He's been phenomenal. He's yet another Tampa Bay arm. They have a ridiculous rotation, but I don't really want to ever get to somebody that is still kind of an unproven commodity who's averaging 11.2 DraftKings points per game here. I know a lot of that was relief earlier this season. So I guess, you got to have to write it off a little bit, but I expect the Ks to come down and therefore 8,500 coming from a relief situation into a starting situation. I'm just going to short him again. It worked out well against Baltimore last time out. I think I'm just going to be shorting him again today.
Yeah, I just don't, for me, I don't see a way to get overweight to him. And I don't want to talk people off of him, certainly not for cash games. He's in my player pool still. I just don't want to be overweight to the 50% number on DraftKings or the 30% number on FanDuel. And I still have reservations about how good he actually is when he's a 29-year-old that was an unranked prospect that has an average fastball velocity of 91 miles per hour, and half of those appearances are out of the bullpen.
Well, I have absolutely no reservations about how good our tools and content are here at Stokastic. Stokastic Plus tools and content right now, you can get for 50% off using promo code MLB Live. We've been running this for a while here at the MLB streets, but it's not going to last forever. So if you've been thinking about getting in and trying some of the best tools and content in the DFS industry, the best, in fact, if you've thought about, hey, I want to play when the Open Championship comes around, I'm going to play the Millie Maker, or I'm going to play, in the 150, the Mini Max or something like that. For golf streets, the top golfers tool, being able to build leverage. Greg doesn't know anything about golf. Well, actually knows quite a bit about golf for the most part, but not so much about like the PGA Tour guys. And he builds based off of that top golfers tool all season long. Greg, how's that been going for you?
It's good. Yeah, I used to play golf competitively.
Right.
But in terms of DFS golf, I've never played. I don't know anything about the PGA Tour. I'm only an expert on the Live Golf Tour, which is really what I follow a little bit more closely.
So tools and content, the top drivers tool also for NASCAR. That's another thing you can check out. Use promo code MLB Live for the good people in life like yourselves who are going to enjoy the best tools and content using that promo. Stop guessing, start winning, and join us here at Stokastic Plus today. Okay.
Promo code MLB Live.
Not today. All right, we continue on to the stacks portion of the program. I know you're all excited to be here.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a question?
Not really. I'm just in shock at how undervalued I am by you as a person in the world. It's fine. I get it.
Eric
No
Lindquist,
respect.
I'm sure you're okay.
Oh my God. Tyler Xander, shut up. We continue. The Angels are very, very popular. I'm going to be shorting them. I'm going to do this because this has been a fun question to ask you at the onset of these shows. Greg, what is your single entry stack team of choice today?
All right, let me refresh the top stacks tool and see where we're at right now. I was vacillating between the Toronto Blue Jays and the Los Angeles Dodgers earlier. I want to see what we've gotten on the ownership front here. You know, I've undecided on this, what I'm actually going to play in single entry. I'm leaning towards the Dodgers because they're so expensive that I think it's going to limit what their ownership is going to be. I think we're going to see a whole lot of ownership going to the Angels in single entry. I think Minnesota is going to be popular. I think Texas is going to be popular. Another reason I think German Marquez warrants some consideration, at least for single entry, if you need to save money, is that I think the Twins are going to be one of the most popular teams in those contests, and you're getting a little bit of leverage there. Number one, we're having the Twins as an over-owned team in the top stacks tool. German Marquez on the other side looking a little bit under-owned. I'm going to say the Dodgers. I know Ian Anderson's pitching better as of late, but whenever you can get the Dodgers at low ownership, it makes sense to me. We have them as the team with the number one top stack odds on the entire slate with only 2.5% ownership over on DraftKings. So that's something that is very appealing to me. Over on FanDuel, it's going to be a little bit different because the Dodgers are much, much less expensive on FanDuel. So we've seen this a few slates as of late. I think there was one, 2 days ago, where there was only 2 hitters on the Dodgers on FanDuel that were priced over 3,000, and the team just ended up being uber popular. So FanDuel, I'm going to say the Toronto Blue Jays. On DraftKings, it'll be the Dodgers.
Okay, no problem with that. Dodgers really are a fantastic offense in Atlanta, where we've seen a lot of runs here of late. That's for damn sure. 90 degrees once again here in this spot. Ian Anderson, didn't even bring him up earlier. I don't even know how he would be viable, how he would even enter a lineup for me today. So yeah, the Dodgers, I'm just fine with that. What about our team, St. Louis? I feel like, again...
By the way, we got a super chat when we started the show that you didn't
did
answer.
We really? Oh, well,
Yeah.
then I'm an a-hole, and then there's that. Here we go.
Well, that's true.
Jorge Yacom. What? Yacom. There we go. Jorge Yacom. Good to see you again, my friend. $10. Top pitcher and stack for leverage on single entry large GPP DK. Thanks. No, thank you for the $10. You're much appreciated. So top pitcher and stack for leverage, Greg.
Yeah, so if we're just talking about leverage, still number one for me is going to be the Dodgers. And leverage will look a little bit different on a 14-game slate as a 4 or 5-game slate because, you know, on something like that, I'm going to take an offensive ownership, also looking at the pitcher's ownership they're going up against into account for as well. But for single entry DK, like I said, the Dodgers, I think they're going to be the most under-owned team relative to their upside. As far as pitchers go, so we're talking about leverage here, right? That's what he wants to know.
Leverage.
One of them would be German Marquez for me.
Okay.
I think the Twins are going to be fairly popular in single entry. He also works as a pivot off of Jeffrey Springs. Obviously, I really like Nola, but there's no leverage to be had in rostering Aaron Nola.
I'll say Alek Manoah just because I think, you know, at a 12.5% top two pitcher percentage, 11.5% ownership, there is some leverage there. I just think against Milwaukee, there's going to be some strikeouts to be had. So I'm going to go that direction.
Yeah, but you don't have to be this contrarian single entry. If you're going to play the Dodgers, you could be chalky at pitcher. If you're going to play contrarian pitchers, you play a chalky offensive. You don't have to make your entire lineup as contrarian as possible.
Yeah, it just depends on how many lineups are in it and what you're going up against. Like if there were a 50,000 person tournament, you're throwing a dart in. Yeah, that's not ideal. But single entry, they're generally a lot lower in terms of like the 121. How many people are in it day-to-day basis? Like 350, 500, some super small like that. So you don't have to think about it too much in that regard. But best of luck to you. Thank you so much for the super chat. And then Loco coming through. El Negro Loco, the news god himself, giving gifts to the people, 5 Stokastic DFS advice memberships here to the YouTube channel. Appreciate you, my guy. He doesn't have to do these things. He just likes you guys that much. That's what it is.
This is some big news from EMAC. EMAC is saying that when he moved to the DC area, Baltimore lost 11 straight Sundays his first year out there. Melvin Mora was involved. First of all, Melvin, that feels too recent for EMAC. Melvin Mora, I would think, who's an old-timey Orioles player?
I don't know, Cal Ripken Jr. That's old-timey.
No, that's too recent for EMAC as well.
Oh, okay. Let's go.
How about
1960s Orioles. Here we go.
Joe Durham. Joe Durham was the guy when EMAC used to go to games.
Gus Triandos, Ron Hansen, a Jackie Brandt, if you will.
So the other thing, the other thing too, to add to what EMAC said, have the Orioles? Is there any evidence that the Orioles have ever won on a Sunday? I don't think this has anything to do with EMAC. I just think they don't ever win games ever.
No, they are trash. Their name is Chastity. They are white trash.
Brooks Robinson. Yeah, we got Rabashua saying Brooks Robinson. I used to have a Brooks Robinson signed baseball card. I don't know where any of my baseball cards are anymore. But
really? Oh,
yeah.
My little brother's got all my cards now. Well, I have a bunch of Kobe's that I need to unleash upon the world. A lot of Kobe's. Rip City.
The other thing too is anything I collected when I was younger, it was just in a binder that got thrown around and nothing was in good condition. So none of the stuff is worth anything anyway.
Yeah. I wish I could go back in time and instead of taking every card out of a case to trade with my friends, that I just kept it in the damn case. Why did I need to hold them all the time, Greg? Why?
I don't know. So that's the other reason. The reason Pokemon cards are so expensive now is because all of us lost or broke our cards when we were younger. The reason
we actually played with them.
Yeah, because you had to be the biggest. If it's not nerdy enough to have been somebody's like, I had this massive Pokemon card collection when I was younger, you had to have had that collection, held it through the years, and kept them in good condition. Like been a kid and been like, I have this Charizard, but I'm never going to play with it. Fuck off. Anybody who sold their,
I want to clip that forever. That was beautiful.
Yeah, anybody who sold their Charizard for $100,000 recently
must be nice. I should. It's got to be somewhere there. Whatever. Let's go back to talking stacks here, my friend. And there's some positive leverage to be had, and we can go through on a 14-game slate every team in baseball. It feels like to a certain extent. I think the Dodgers. I agree with you. Up against Ian Anderson, some of the best leverage you can possibly get to. I think Toronto really stands out for me too. Going up against Adrian Hauser, I don't know why they're not more popular, but you know what? That's the beauty of this kind of a slate is that you can get whatever team you really want, not name the Angels, not name the Diamondbacks, and not name the Rangers of all teams that are going to be chalky. You can roster pretty much any team and feel as though you can guarantee you're getting less than 10% on almost every single batter. So Toronto really stands out for me. Who are some of the other teams that you find yourself stacking a lot?
Yeah, so other teams that end up getting to, let me pull up my lineups and see where I'm at with a lot of these teams, considering the most recent run of ownership. I mentioned before the teams that I like the most overall are the Dodgers and the Toronto Blue Jays. Pricing, I really don't find to be problematic today. You and I have talked about this a bunch recently. The top-end pitchers have not been all that expensive this year. 14-game slate, there's a lot of good value options to plug in. So Dodgers, Blue Jays, I don't have any issues paying up for those two offenses to be contrarian. As for other teams, if you do need to save salary, if you're looking to punt at offense, my favorite offense to punt with is the Oakland A's, strictly because I think Zach Greinke is no longer capable of getting out big league hitters.
He's very bad.
Yeah, he's bad. These are some of my favorite spots for DFS. Horrible pitchers against horrible offenses. Something has to give, and I tend to think that it's going to be the Zach Greinke side that collapses here. Greinke this year, a 5.05 ERA, a 5.72 expected ERA. His average fastball velocity is now down to around 88 miles per hour. He's 38 years old. Everybody has a point in time where their skills deteriorate and they're no longer capable of being a professional athlete. I just think that's where we're at with Zach Greinke right now. Doesn't generate any swing and misses. Last year, it was a really big issue for him. And we've seen the velocity decline quite a bit over the last few years, but he's still been able to maintain pretty good strikeout rates and all that. So 3 years ago, 2020 with the Astros, and this was when we were really starting to see him decline velocity-wise, he was still able to maintain a 24.5% strikeout rate. Last year, that dipped to 17.2%. The Astros like, we're getting this guy off the roster. He's not going to help us as a contender. The Royals pick him up, and it's goodwill, right? They have a good relationship with Zach Greinke. That's where he started his career. That's really where he broke out. He won a Cy Young there, and he just doesn't have it anymore. He's an 11.2% strikeout rate this year. It's an issue. Also, his walk rate is higher than it was a few years ago. So I don't think he has anything left in the tank. The A's offense, I certainly can't advocate for them being any good whatsoever, but they're so cheap that I do think that they can make some sense as secondary stack, or if you really do just want a totally punted offense and pay up a pitcher, this is the team that I think makes the most sense to do that with.
I'm with you. I like that call. We move our way down the board. St. Louis, like getting to them quite a bit here. That's going to be a team against the Cubs that I'm just going to be rostering quite a bit here. Where did they just go in my sheet? I don't even know if they just disappeared. Why is Kyle Hendricks valued ever? I mean, he's just a guy that I've been targeting constantly. Feel like for years now, the 536 expected slugging, nearly a 300 expected batting average, really, really bad in that department. The ball's getting put in play, 16.4 degree average launch angle. Nolan Gorman batting second, 567 expected slugging. Just what a smash spot for him. Those top five for St. Louis. I don't think I have to get super cute. I'll get a little bit of Dylan Carlson. I'll get a little bit of Harrison Bader, but it's just these top five guys for St. Louis. Just give me a lot of them going up against Hendricks. Is that a team you're interested in at all?
Funny, all year I've said I don't like to play the Cardinals against right-handed pitching. And over the last week, there's been something like 4 spots now where I've liked playing the Cardinals against right-handed pitching because they're only going up against the worst righties in baseball. They got Chichi Gonzalez the other day. Today they're getting Kyle Hendricks. Hendricks is also somebody who's incredibly washed, and his stuff has declined even more than Greinke's at this point. He was never a hard thrower, but now 87 average mile per hour fastball velocity for Kyle Hendricks, down from 87.5 last year. So another downtick for him, 5.4, 5.47 expected ERA. And back in the day when Kyle Hendricks was a really good pitcher, he got by on a couple of things. It was never strikeouts, but he didn't give up a lot of hard contact and he had a really high ground ball rate. His ground ball rate is all the way down to 36.9%, and his walk rate is up. So these are all really big red flags. Let's see, 6.8% walk rate for Hendricks. The last couple of years, it was 5.6, which was also up for him. The year before that was 2.5%. The year before that, 4.4. So he could feel it. He knows that he doesn't have the stuff to get these guys out. As a result, he's really nibbling on the ends of the strike zone. So more guys are getting on base, more walks. And then once those guys are getting on base, he's allowing more fly balls. More of those fly balls are becoming home runs with a 14.3% home run to fly ball rate. So yeah, I agree with you. I really do not like playing the Cardinals against right-hand pitching in general, but we keep having these exceptions that pop up.
Yep, it's going to be fun. I think I said it too. When Brendan Donovan, out of the middle of nowhere, really, I don't think he was ever a highly touted prospect. Let me look through. 2018, 7th rounder, University of South Alabama. I'm going to guess that they didn't expect for him to get called up and have an expecting batting average of like 275. He was hitting 300 there for a while. What is his number now? As I'm pulling it up. I mean, the guy has been just flat out good from the left side for them, just in terms of keeping the line moving. Batting .310 at the big league level, only 1 homer, 22 RBIs, but that's one guy from the left side of the plate. Nolan Gorman was always going to be something when he got called up. It's really standing out that there's pieces you get at the top of the lineup. Dylan Carlson, always a switch hitter, where you can get some more exceptions to the rule when you get some of these lefties that can keep it going and set the table for guys like Goldschmidt, guys like Arenado. It's just, there's no free passes through that top 5.
Yeah, no, it's I'm on the same page with you. I don't think there's any issues there.
All right. Well, let's run out some stack talk here. We'll talk some odd shopper, which I just saw Blitz said, oh, don't call me Lindquist. Stop it. And a shaggy headed Lindquist. It's keeping tight.
No. She's talking about the picture of you that's photoshopped on my wall.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely me. That was after a haircut too, which is just absurd. What? Oh,
I'm just making it tattooed on my arm.
Thanks, honey.
You're there forever now. I have to go out on dates and explain to people why I have a tattoo of a high school boy on my arm.
I want to know what love is. I want you to show me.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to go into look at this photograph.
Every time I do, it makes me laugh. Other stacks to possibly be rostering. Round it out. Give me the super contrarian. I have one super contrarian stack for you. It's actually, I'm curious if it's like our dead last stack on the board today. It's got to be close. It's the third worst. So there's that. I'm going to roster some San Diego against Aaron Nola. It's the most popular. He's my favorite pitcher on the slate. I'm going to be way over on him, but I think San Diego has really outkicked their coverage, absent Fernando Tatis, and now even absent Manny Machado for the last week. I don't know how they keep doing it. Aaron Nola completely went nuclear. Do you remember the game last year? It was during the FanDuel Live final, and Aaron Nola had like a bazillion strikeouts, and they tried to get a complete game for him in the ninth, and his brother started the rally.
Oh, I
and
do remember that.
Giving him like 3 lean runs, and guys were going berserk at the FanDuel Live final in Denver. But anyway, it was bonkers. I got to be thinking about something there where Nola's going to either just mow them all down or he's going to get lit up.
Yeah, I'm not playing San Diego today, but if I'm not mistaken, not only did Austin Nola start the rally, didn't he end it with a home run as well? Didn't he hit a 3-run home run to win the game?
He might have, but it wasn't against his brother at the end. But I think he did hit the walk-off home run. I think you're right.
Yeah, no, Aaron Nola was out of the game at that point. Mm-hmm. But by the way, this is a game from about a year ago, so I could be
could be a little foggy because we saw 5,000 baseball games since then.
Yeah, but I do remember a game where Nola had a shutout going. His brother ended up getting a hit off him in the 9th inning, and then Nola got pulled after that. Aaron Nola got pulled. Too confusing when he got 2 Nolas involved. And then the Padres ended up batting around the order, and Austin Nola ended up hitting a home run to walk off the game, I think.
Okay. Give me your super contrarian stack of the day. Stack O the day, if you will, for the Irish people.
Do the Dodgers at 2% not count?
Oh, yeah, that definitely counts. If you can roster the best offense in baseball against a meh pitcher and Ian Anderson, you should probably do it.
If I had to pick another one, it would be the Tampa Bay Rays against Mitch Keller at 1% ownership. Mitch Keller has just been awful this year. If you watch him pitch in spurts, it matches the eye test. You could watch him strike out a hitter on 3 pitches and be like, oh, look how good Mitch Keller's stuff is. He's throwing 99 miles per hour. Just overall, the results haven't been there. Nobody's playing the Rays against him. So I think that makes some sense. But the answer for me is really the Dodgers.
All right. Well, that'll kind of conclude the stack portion of the program. We'll kind of recap everything. We go position by position to give you an idea of what we're doing with our lineups. I'm rerunning mine here as we go. But first, Odd Shopper, the presenting sponsor here of MLB Live Before Lock. I love going over there. My process starts every single day heading to Odd Shopper, looking through some of the total strikeouts props, looking through some of the different things there. And then I use that to help inform decisions on sites like Prize Picks, on BetMGM, if you're in a legal state over there. But Prize Picks for me, use promo code OSMO, sign up over there. But I'm telling you right away that this data and tools, the stuff that they have from Alex Baker, Sean Zahn, Steve Buzzard, look, we're talking the best DFS players. And now they're helping inform all of your betting decisions. They are so freaking good at this. It's ridiculous. If you're just blindly going to go in every single day, you head to Odd Shopper, sign up with your email address, and you sign up and get access to these tools and content. I'm telling you, you're going to find ways to be profitable. You just are. Jack Sawinski leading off there, 43% expected ROI, going up against Jeffrey Springs, left on left. That goes towards Terry McBride's point there, plus 750. It's a big number to be getting on a leadoff hitter there in that spot, in that ballpark. I'm all right with that. That seems like a spot you could go to. Alek Manoah seems like that's going to be kind of a stay away in this regard, just a 16% expected ROI. But German Marquez over 4.5. You did like him against the Twins. And I do look at a guy like Kirilloff, who I think has made a lot of strides in AAA ball and this new section or this new era he's going to have here. But he's still been around a 35% strikeout guy in the big so far. So I can't be so biased with him that I don't look at that prop and think that there is some money to be made betting the over of 4.5 that German Marquez at the book listed. It'll tell you the best sports book to go bet it as well. Go take advantage of that right now. But I'm going to turn it over to my friend Greg there. Greg, any bets that you've got on the board for today?
Let's see what has changed. The German Marquez is one that was in my betting video earlier in the day and is something that I also bet the over 4.5 number. Have you seen the Sean V bit that's going on in chat? Because it's really funny.
No, but I must see. What is the touch my camera through the fence thing? I've seen this like 48 times from Ryan Renebaum. Why are we doing this? Sean V. Oh, wow. Wow.
I mean, we're just giving Sean all the credit he deserves for all those predictions.
Sean B predicting a recession. Sean B predicted monkeypox. Sean B predicted the sun would rise.
The 08 housing crisis was
got
pretty
him,
good.
as Evac would say, got him.
So the Marquez one certainly makes a whole lot of sense. I'm scrolling through to see what else stands out here. A lot of these lines have moved a whole bunch since earlier. Another one I could get behind, Graham Ashcraft, under 3.5 strikeouts is plus money. He does not generate strikeouts. He is a 13% strikeout rate, somewhere around there off the top of my head. And then another thing also when it comes to Ashcraft is he's in a tough matchup against the San Francisco Giants. The Giants strike out right around league average, but they're also well above league average against right-hand pitching. And then you just get a guy in Ashcraft who the last time he pitched against him, I think he pitched into the 7th inning against the Giants and only had 1 strikeout. He just doesn't get swing and misses. 3.5 seems like a low number, but we have the under hitting 58% of the time. It's plus money. So Ashcraft is another one that makes sense.
All right, everybody, don't forget, go check out OddsShopper. Sign up right now with your email address. That gets you access to free, and yes, I said free, tools, content to help inform your betting decisions. Use that in conjunction with BetMGM. If you use any of the promos that we have on the main screen over at Stokastic, go up to the deals in the sportsbook and use everything that we have over at OddsShopper to help inform your decisions. We love using it every single day. I hope you guys will too. All righty, my friend, we've reached the end of our boarding walk. We go position by position to round out this show. Let's start at catcher. Who are the players that you're finding yourself rostering the most?
So starting at catcher?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't know if I just had a brain fart if you didn't say position, but
I guess we could say pitcher if you wanted to do pitcher first. I did say catcher though. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go catcher here because I have it pulled up. MJ Melendez is popping up in a good amount of my lineups. Just a fairly cheap catcher who not only has catcher eligibility, but also his outfield eligibility. So there's 4 spots that we could play him. And I think that's something that kind of bumps his ownership for me as well. The other one, Sean Murphy, who's $3,800 going up against Zach Greinke.
Love it. Adley Rutschman as well. Don't sleep on him. Starting to come alive. Best hitting prospect from the catcher position in a long time. To first base we go. And if you've watched any of the days or any of these live before locks the last few days, you know Alex Kirilloff's going to be my top guy at the first base position. And outfield, who are you going to be getting to the most, Greg?
Alex Kirilloff.
Oh, you're with me.
Yep.
Let's go. I'm all about that life.
He's my most rostered player from the Twins today.
He's my most rostered player on the entire slate, so that's cool. What else do we got here? Well, I'm talking from a hitting perspective, not from a pitching perspective. That is obviously Aaron Nola, Jose Miranda as well. Again, my Twins, I'm okay getting to these guys today, that's for sure. And Vlad Guerrero, Paul Goldschmidt, hi. How are both of you doing? To second base we go, Greg.
Second base, I actually have a lot of exposure to Oakland A's guys, I realize, as I'm going through this, and it's just a lot of these guys fit so easily into stacks, help me save salary. Because like I said, my 2 favorite stacks today are the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. How do I make that work? Well, I plug in some cheaper guys who are in good spots. So Tony Kemp, Nolan Gorman, those are the second basemen I get the most exposure to. Both of them are underpriced.
Nolan Gorman, I was always going to play a ton of today. And then, yeah, I'm going to get to Luis Arraez as well. That shouldn't surprise anybody. Max Muncy, Gavin Lux, kind of in shortly behind them. Going to be some uncomfortable pitching lineups that I have in a couple of those, but we continue on to third base.
Yeah, so over at third base, it's funny. The studs at third base have really sucked as of late. Rafael Devers, Jose Ramirez, both of them have picked up a whole bunch of ownership individually on slates. We've had these slates where there's been 5-6 games. We've seen Devers, Ramirez get up to 30-40% ownership on some of them. And I do think there's a chance we see them coming in lower owned today. Number one, just because the slate is so big, but also because they've burned people recently. So I'm paying up. I think Devers and Ramirez both make sense, but the guy I get to the most is Jonah Bride. Cheap
My
hitter
favorite.
On the A's, batting second.
Look at that. Yeah, he's going to be very popular today. He should be very popular today. I get it. Gio Urshela for me, Rafael Devers. I am going to get up to him. And Nolan Arenado. There you go. To the shortstop position.
That is Trey Turner for me.
Yeah, shouldn't surprise anybody. Nick Gordon, Carlos Correa, Can you guys see a trend here? I think they all are Minnesota Twins. I get it. Trey Turner, shortly behind them, and Tommy Edman. I wasn't kidding. Bo Bichette, I need to boost him up a little bit. I should have more than 5% Bo Bichette. That makes sense to me because I do like the Blue Jays. And to round it out here at outfield, Greg, round it out for us.
Yeah, so pay up options, Ohtani, Trout, fairly straightforward there. Going cheaper at outfield, Seth Brown is in a bunch of my lineups. Alec Thomas, Kirilloff also is outfield eligibility. Hunter Dozier, another one with outfield eligibility that I get to for cheaper. Those are really the core guys for me that I have the most exposure to.
The people want dong picks. You can get dong picks. Nolan Gorman, that's mine. Who is your dong pick of the day, Gregory?
Misunderstood. So outfield. No, I don't know why I just said outfield. Home run pick. I can tell you who our number one bet is of the day.
Ooh, let's do that.
Pirates rookie,
Yep.
Jake Sawinski, because one book has him listed at plus 750, where most books have him like around plus 500 or plus 600. So we have Sawinski homering 17% of the time. Obviously, it's a fairly low number, but when the number's plus 750, that's something that's going to pop up in a pretty significant way. Jeffrey Springs is going to be on the mound on the other side of the game, and he's going to be a really popular DFS pitcher. But Jake Sawinski has shown some power upside. I think him when he's a plus 750 odds, that makes sense as a betting option for me.
I believe he triple donged once upon a time. I don't think they just give those out unless you're in Wrigley Field and your name is Rojas. Then they do, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, it's buy two, get one free at Coors Field.
Oh man, that's good stuff. Well, anything else you want to add about this slate? I think we're at lock basically. I mean, we have 4 minutes, but we usually get out here around now. I'm uploading my lineups as we speak. Done, away from the computer, finished it up. Greg, do you have your lineups in?
Yep, everything's all good to go. I've got my parents coming over. We're doing a fiesta here.
Ooh, what does that entail?
Cooking Mexican food and my dad bringing tequila. I don't drink, but my dad and my brothers will be drinking.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty sure I want to get drunk with Mr. Ehrenberg sometime.
He's the happiest and nicest person in the world.
Dude, you sent me that picture of him fishing in Florida, and I was like, this seems like a guy I want to go get drunk with.
Did I send you a picture of him fishing?
Yeah, they were just out like hanging out on the boat, and they were living their lives. And I think you were feeling a little nostalgic. They were down in Florida living their lives for retirement, and Greg's up in New Jersey, and it's freaking 0 degrees at the time. It's not 0 degrees out there right now. I can tell you that much.
So it's fiesta in my house. It's being called a fiesta. I don't know what to tell you.
What does that entail? Mexican shit.
Yeah.
Orton's neckbeard. Good troll. We'll leave it on that one. Tyler Zander. He lives in Texas. Probably going to go have a Mexican fiesta himself. Have a little good. No, we're not. We're going to have barbecue season.
I don't. Me and tequila have a fight, and tequila wins every time. And yeah, no, I don't do tequila anymore after college. Yeah. Found that out.
I'm probably going to go drink my face off too. It's going to be a fun weekend. Best of luck to everybody. Hit that like button as you guys get out of here. He's Greg. He's about to go have some fun. I'm Eric. I'll probably have some fun too. We'll see you guys later. Happy weekend.